Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen tries to steal OP's house. My friend tries to secretly remodel my house in order to claim ownership of it. So I inherited a house from my dad a few years ago. It's a 3-bedroom place in a nice neighborhood where rent usually goes for $2,500 plus per month. Since I don't pay rent, but I have to cover upkeep and insurance, I figured having a roommate would be a good idea. One of my close friends who works from home seemed like a good fit. I did the math and decided that $800 a month would cover everything comfortably. When I offered her the room, she asked if she could just pay $500 a month for the first few months until she gets settled in her new job. I agreed because $500 still covers the bills, and I wasn't looking to profit off of her. A few months in, she started acting really weird. She'd constantly send me out of the house, to the store, to pick up her boyfriend, to get more coffee for us, but she never wanted to come with me. I thought it was odd, but I didn't think much of it at first. Then things got really suspicious. She was always video chatting when I wasn't around, and I caught glimpses that looked like she was talking to construction guys. One day, I snooped around and I found texts between her and several renovation companies asking for quotes to remodel my house. She was saving money on rent to secretly plan a home remodel on my house, which I didn't approve of. She even tried gifting me a week's stay in Vegas a few weeks ago, probably hoping I'd leave so she could start the remodel. I told her I don't like to leave for that long, which now I'm super glad I didn't. When I confronted her, she swore that she wasn't actually going to go through with it, but I don't believe her. The texts and video chats were pretty convincing, and I saw my address on every quote. I kicked her out because I couldn't trust her anymore, and now we haven't spoken since she left. My house has a lot of sentimental value to me, and I love its antique charm. I'm so glad I trusted my gut and stayed. So, am I the jerk for kicking her out? Edit. Thanks for explaining what she was really trying to do. It all makes perfect sense now, because she has tried talking me into splitting ownership with her in the past. Why would she do that? To claim part ownership of the house because she invested in it. I bet she saw a TikTok video about equity made by some teenager. She's doing this because she wants to claim that she made a substantial investment and is now a part owner. Kick her out. She made or attempted to make alterations to your house without your consent. Also, please tell me you had her sign a lease, even if it was a basic template from online. Either way, go to a landlord/tenant lawyer and get this sorted out right away. You have no time to waste here. Am I the jerk for tricking my parents into being on time for my wedding? Plus 2-year update. I'm 33 male, and my parents are late for everything. Both of my sisters and myself have been disappointed by them so many times. Graduation ceremonies, birthday parties, even my father's retirement dinner. It's completely my mother's fault. She's a wonderful mother and I love her dearly. She just doesn't understand the concept of punctuality. I've seen her talking to her sister on the phone and reminded her that she needed to be at my baby sister's dance recital. She waved me off and arrived after my sister had danced. We're all used to it. My dad is just done trying to get her to be on time for anything. My now wife, female 28, told me in no uncertain terms that if my mother was late for our wedding, I'd be sorry. She was only half joking, but she was a witness to my mom and dad arriving halfway through my cousin's quinceañera. So here's what I did. It's completely on me. My wife was not involved at all. If there's a jerk move here, it was completely mine. When we were getting samples for the wedding, I talked to the printer and I had one special invitation printed with a time on it stating that it was an hour earlier than the actual start time. My mother was beside herself apparently when they left the house and thought they were going to miss the wedding since she was a part of it, with her and my mother-in-law lighting the candles we would use to light the unity candle and stuff. When she arrived and noticed other people were also just arriving and parking, she was so relieved that we were starting late that she just went with it. The ceremony went beautifully, and so did the wedding pictures and the reception. The problem came last Sunday. My parents came over for a big family dinner and we didn't bother starting the grill until they showed up. She asked why everyone wasn't eating, and we just said we knew we would be waiting for them since they're always late. She said that she was not always late and had been on time for my wedding. She hadn't been. They arrived 45 minutes after the time on the invitation. My idiot cousin John snorted at her statement. A few other people giggled or smiled at this, and she picked up and asked what was so funny. I came clean and I told her about the special invitation. She's upset with me now for not trusting her and making her look foolish in front of everyone. If my cousin had just controlled himself, she never would have known. Am I the jerk? Part of the reason she's mad is because she had her invitation framed. To be honest, I was already planning a heist with my sisters to replace it with a real one in case she ever noticed the discrepancy between hers and the one we have framed in our home. Update. My parents have been embarrassed for 2 years now because of how I tricked them into being on time for my wedding. Pretty much every time I see them, they say that I was a jerk for not trusting them. Our church is very busy and full of young people, so lots of weddings. To the point where there are 3 weddings every Saturday all summer long. One at 10, one at noon, and one at 3. Sometimes, but not often, there's also an evening wedding. My little sister just got married. She snagged the noon slot. My mom got super involved in planning the wedding to prove that I'm just an immature jerk. She said that she would be on time and not miss anything. I set up a betting pool for kisses depending on how late my parents were. It cost $10, and if you guessed within 5 minutes, you got a free pass to have my sister and her husband kiss. Almost everyone bet on time because of the extravaganza at my wedding. The correct answer was 35 minutes. Only me, my cousin John, and his sister Yvonne got free passes for the kissing, and I bet $100. I was confident. We raised almost $1,500 for the honeymoon with my stupid idea, and I got to interrupt my sister from eating with my 10 passes. Win-win. Except for my mom, who thinks I did it to embarrass her. She literally helped plan the wedding and was still late, by over half an hour. We were literally cleaning up the decorations in my sister's colors, while the next wedding was decorating after us. So that's that. My mom will never change, but I have harnessed her inability to care about punctuality for the good of humanity. See you whenever my other sister gets married. Am I the jerk for ordering pizza at my friend's wedding because there was no food? My wife and I were invited to my friend's wedding, which was going to have about 70 people, mostly family. When we got there, we were seated at a table with some other guests. They were nice people and we mingled well, having a good time chatting. The wedding was also quite nice, and both my friend and his new wife were very happy. After the ceremony, every table got 2 bottles of wine, bread and butter, and there was an open bar, so we started having a few drinks. Then the food came out, set up as a buffet. I was half buzzed and looking forward to getting some food in my belly. When it was time to eat, a few tables at a time were called. The first tables called were understandably the family on both sides. The problem was that the family members, his in-laws, were larger people. Now, I don't care how much people eat, but I noticed the helpings of food they took while I was patiently waiting for our table to be called. I also noticed that they went for seconds before all of the tables were called and no one stopped them. I didn't say anything, though I thought it was rude. I just assumed that there was a lot of food. To my surprise, by the time we were called, there was nothing left. I asked if more food was coming out, but apparently it had all been served. So we grabbed what little we could and went back to sit down and ate the scraps. We were all still pretty hungry and a bit upset, so we kind of bashed the first few tables for eating all the food. Someone mentioned that they could go for some pizza, so I had the drunken idea of ordering some. So that's what we did. We all pitched in and ordered 4 large pizzas and some chicken wings from a local pizza joint close to the venue, so it didn't take long for it to be delivered. I met with the delivery guy outside, brought the food to our table, and we started eating. Some of the other tables noticed and asked where the pizza came from. Apparently, some of the other tables close to ours didn't get any food either, so we shared with them. This caused some commotion because other people were looking for it and asking the wedding party where the pizza was. I guess there were others who didn't get to eat either. We did share with anyone who asked us. My friend came to talk to me about why I ordered the food. His bride was not happy about it. It ruined the aesthetics. So I told him that we didn't get to eat and that the food ran out long before our table was called and we were really hungry. He then asked why we didn't just step out to eat and then come back. Though annoyed about that, I respectfully explained to him that we were all drinking on an empty stomach and that it probably wasn't the best idea to have us walking around looking for food. I don't think he liked that, but he went back to his bride, who was glaring at us. What were we supposed to do, starve? This wasn't the end though. As we were finishing eating, one of the in-laws came to our table and asked where the pizza came from. This is where I may be the jerk. There were 2 slices left and I knew he was eyeing them. I asked the other people at my table if they wanted one and everyone declined. This guy then said that he'd have one. I then took the 2 slices, put them on my plate, and started to eat them. Then I looked at him and said something like, "No, you and everyone at your table had way more than your fair share of the buffet and you ate all of it. This is the only reason we ordered food in the first place. And now you have the nerve to ask us to share?" His face went red and he returned to his table. There was a lot of discussion going on there, and they were all looking back at us with daggers. The bride looked even more ticked off at us and had a bit of an argument with my friend. He eventually came back to tell us that we had to leave. I didn't mean to start any problems, so my wife and I called a cab and we left. He called me a few days later and we had a long talk. I explained my perspective and he agreed that his in-laws were really rude for eating all of the food and leaving most of the other guests with very little. A lot of people actually complained to him about it and everyone was drinking, thinking there would be food, and they were disappointed. He was upset with his in-laws because he told them how many guests there would be and to order food for that many people. He also saw how much they were taking but assumed that they ordered more. He was wrong. He brought this up with his wife and she said that apparently, because the in-laws paid for the alcohol and the food, they felt entitled to eat what they wanted. She was really mad at them and went off on them for tainting her special day. He also said a lot of the other non-family guests started to leave soon after we left because they were hungry too. They still had fun celebrating, but it did kind of put a damper on their special day. Out of 70 people, about 30 left. I also found out that the guy who came to our table was his father-in-law. He was really embarrassed by what I said to him. He felt pretty bad when he found out close to half of the guests didn't get to eat anything and left early. Not the jerk. There's no reason other tables should have had seconds before you had firsts. I can understand miscalculating how much food would be needed, but they didn't even try to triage. Am I the jerk for refusing to help my sister's baby in the middle of the night? I, 21 female, am a college student and I live with my family still. Last year, my family moved into a slightly smaller house, and because my sister and I were gone all the time anyway, me with college and her with work and staying at her boyfriend's house, we agreed that we'd share the biggest bedroom. And it wasn't going to be a long-term thing, especially since we're both getting to the age where it's time to move out. I would have by now, but I'm in nursing school and I can't juggle a full-time job to support myself simultaneously. It wasn't a big deal, especially since we'd really only have to occasionally be there together during the summertime. However, in the fall, my sister ended up getting pregnant with her boyfriend. She said her and the boyfriend were going to figure it out. It's a little complicated since he, 25 male, still lives with his mom, and her and him live an hour apart. His mom wanted her to move in because they have the space for her and the baby, but his mom smokes in the house, so it wasn't a viable option. So they spent months trying to figure it out, but neither of them were willing to compromise and move or get an apartment in one city or the other. Until literally a week before she was scheduled to be induced. My sister agreed that she'd be willing to move to his city and get an apartment there together. However, that week came quickly and the baby was born. A month later, and she still lives here, and he still lives an hour away and only comes to see them 3 days a week. During that time, I'm expected to get out of my room and crash on the couch, which is ridiculous to me. And when he's not here, my sister gets so unbelievably angry at me for not getting up at 1 a.m. to feed and change her baby. She claims that it's selfish of me not to, since she hardly gets sleep as it is, and it helps her out a lot. I've done it a handful of times, but it exhausts me, and I remembered that I'm young and childless. I'll help during the day, but I'm not losing sleep when I wasn't the one to decide to have a baby. She's angry at me for it, which I can kind of understand, because we are her support system. But I shouldn't have to change more of my life, getting kicked out of my bedroom and losing sleep, than the baby's father does. And it seems like my generosity is being taken advantage of, because neither of them seem to be in a rush to get out. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. And the fact that no one else in your family is standing up for you is disheartening. Are there any friends you have that you might be able to crash with for a month, that you can frame to your sister as you kindly giving her space while she organizes and packs to move out? Good luck, and whatever you do, do not get sucked into being a parent on account of her mistakes. OP. My mom actually agrees that I should be willing to wake up at that time to feed the baby, but it's not my baby. If I get stuck taking care of one that's not mine now, I'm afraid I will never want one of my own. Would I be the jerk if I didn't adopt my late husband's kids? Before I married my husband, he had 3 kids with his ex-wife, who were 2, 2, and 5. When we got married, his ex was still bitter. I say this in the most respectful way possible, but it's true, as they had only been divorced officially for a year. After that, my husband fought with her for full custody. Unfortunately, we only ended up getting weekends and the complete months of December and July while they were out of school. So it goes without saying I wasn't much of a mother figure to them rather than their father's wife. My husband passed 2 years ago in an accident, and I haven't seen them aside from the funeral in all that time. His wife called me up sometime last month to reveal that she has a brain tumor and she's hoping that I could take the kids in after she passes. Both her parents and my husband's parents are far too old to even care for themselves completely. I still take his mother grocery shopping as she can't do it alone, and that there was no one else who would be able to care for and support the kids in a proper way. I told her I'd consider it, but I needed to think it over. I'm just not sold. I don't want to jump in with full custody on 3 kids who I haven't seen in 2 years. Am I the jerk? And for people who thought it was relevant, we were married for 5 years and together for 6. The kids are now 10, 10, and 14. No, we never got around to having kids of our own, and I still don't have any. Their mother never remarried. I do okay for myself, but could reasonably support the 3 of them provided we all make sacrifices, and their mother or the state helps supplement the income either with her life insurance or some type of aid. The biggest issue I have with myself being the jerk is the commitment. These are little people who my husband loved dearly, but at the same time, I barely even know. I've always thought I was a decent person, but my extreme hesitation makes me think otherwise. Update. I just don't feel I could properly care for them and myself in my life. I told her this, and I feel awful that I made her react the way she did, crying and coughing. There was so much guilt, I felt it was awful. But I think I've always known my decision, that I wasn't going to take them in. I just didn't want to acknowledge it because it made me feel awful. I wish I could tell you where she decided they're going, but after our meeting where I told her my decision, it's been radio silence. As much as I would like to say that they're going somewhere that'll be perfect and fine, I don't know, and their mother doesn't owe me an explanation. But I do wish them and her the best, and the best case scenario, and I pray for their health. Am I the jerk for declining my stepdad's call when they couldn't find me at my stepbrother's wedding? I, 27 female, was at my stepbrother's, who's 29, wedding a couple of days ago. For some context, my mom, who's 59, and his dad, 57, have been together for 10 plus years at this point. My stepbrother even included my mom in the family photos at the wedding and thanked her for looking after his dad in his speech. I could not be happier for her, as this meant a lot to her. However, I was not included in the family photos. This hurt me a little bit, but it was his and his now wife's day, so I wasn't going to complain, and I certainly would never bring it up to them or anyone else other than my partner. Especially not to my mom, who was so shocked and happy that she was included. Anyways, this leads on to the matter at hand. My stepdad was talking to the bride's mother later in the night whilst I was sat near them, half listening and bopping along to the music. The bride's mom says to him that it's lovely to have my stepbrother in the family and that she now has 4 kids instead of 2. Both her daughters are now married. This is when my stepdad turned around and said that he feels the same and is very proud of his 4. My 2 stepbrothers, and both their wives. This instantly felt like a dagger. I should probably add that my mom's previous partner told me when I was only 7 that he never wanted to be a father to me when I asked if I could get him a Father's Day card, plus my own father left when I was only 2. Then my mom started questioning if I was okay. I said I was fine and to leave it alone, but she kept badgering me and then asked me if I had been eavesdropping when I shouldn't have been. I barely nodded, then she told me that she had heard it too, and that it hurt her too, but that he hadn't been thinking. Her comforting me set me off with tears that I'd been trying so hard to hold back. I just said I was going outside for some air. I went outside and walked a little bit away, and I had to cry to myself. When I got myself together, I was walking back when my stepdad called me. I could see him and Mom in front of the hotel. He then called me again, and I waved and declined the call, but they didn't see me. My mom questioned me when I walked back to the hotel, asking if I declined the call, to which I said yes. She then told me that was a stupid thing to do. I tried to explain that I could see them and I waved at them, but she said they couldn't see me. The next morning, my stepdad did apologize and said that he messed up, but I'm still a little upset. I've not said anything to my mom about how I'm feeling because I know she'll just tell me to move on and let it go. Am I the jerk? Should I have just answered the phone? Was I being petty? Not the jerk. In the heat of the moment, it's understandable that you might not be in the mood to talk to him and still need some time to work through your feelings. As the hurt party, communications happen on your time frame, not your stepfather's, and anyone who truly cares about you and your feelings will understand that you will need time to work through it, and not just tell you to let it go. I pretended to be a hotel guest to get a free breakfast. So I'm on vacation in this really cute little town in a relatively cheap country, and there's a big hotel where almost no one is staying at the moment. I came over to buy breakfast, and the guy working there told me I could just have the buffet breakfast for free as their guest. I didn't correct him, had breakfast and left. I paid for a coffee from the bar though. The next day I came for a coffee and decided why not get another free breakfast? The food is being wasted anyway. So I went to the buffet zone and it was already cleaned up. So I went to the restaurant part and I ordered some sunny side up eggs from the menu. But again, another worker probably thought I was their guest who missed the breakfast and brought me the whole entree of things, including fruit and whatever else they had left from the breakfast. When finished, I thought I should ask how much I owed them since I was at the restaurant now. I came to the lady at the counter and she asked if I was their guest, and I immediately said yes. She asked what room I was staying at, and I randomly said 402, sounding really dumb and obviously lying. She then pulled out a sheet of paper with all of the rooms occupied, about 12, and luckily 402 was among them, but the occupant's name was something like Edward, who I'm clearly not. She asked what my name was, and I said, Edward, and then I proceeded to give her and the waiter the money, but they refused, saying that the guests of the hotel have breakfast included. I'm rich by this country's standards, mind you, so I rushed out and then before leaving the premises realized how bad that was. I came back. I told her that I wasn't Edward and I wasn't staying there. She calmly said, yes, I knew, but that was your choice. I asked if I could pay for breakfast and the whole thing was only $5. I didn't have the heart to mention I did it the day before, so that's still on me. After I passed, she smiled warmly and wished me a good day. Sweet lady, and a sweet man who thought I was staying there. I feel like a jerk, even though I came clean and apologized, and really grateful she let me get away with it initially and rethink my messed up ways. Why did I do it in the first place? I do that for fun while on vacation. Just walk into the fanciest hotel I can find and eat breakfast and have it charged to the room. My dad and uncles do this on every vacation at Hampton Inns. It's ridiculous at this point because sometimes they will drive half an hour. I've dressed up like hotel employees to eat at the employee buffet. The break room was comfortable, clean, and had cable TV. To get the hot lunch, a ticket was needed, but the cold food section had a full salad bar and soups, etc. That's called lying, cheating, and stealing. Don't know who you are now, but that's who you were then. Something you shouldn't brag about. Entitled mom thinks anyone can sit on a motorcycle because they don't have doors. First things first, my car is in the shop at the moment because my 20-year-old car makes even funnier noises than normal. I still have to get to work and public transport isn't that great if you work hospital shifts. But I have another way of transportation, a pretty old motorcycle, a BMW R75-5 built in 1970. 50 horsepower engine and a smooth top speed of 175 kilometers per hour. I mostly drive it in the summer for fun on tours with my cousin and a friend. But hey, it's August, so I can pull the ride out of the garage of my parents' house and drive it now. I love this bike because I got it from my grandpa who passed in 2016. I shared his love of motorcycles, unlike my dad, so my grandma got the house and I got the bike. So I drive it from and to work. And today, before my day shift, I stopped at the local supermarket for some gross microwave food, a pack of Marlboros, and a big can of Monster Energy. So I parked my bike and went in for maybe 10 minutes. And when I came back out, there's some girl sitting on my bike while her mother was taking pictures of her. There was a boy too who just stood beside them. The girl was like 16ish and the boy was in elementary school age. Me. Excuse me, what are you doing? Entitled mom. Just taking pictures of my daughter. Me. Any particular reason you're doing it on my motorcycle? Oh, my daughter just loves vintage things. Me. Yeah, well, get off. I need to get to work. The girl. Oh, come on. I need a good-looking picture, and my mom hasn't gotten a good one yet. Me. I don't care. Get off of my property. Entitled mom. Don't you yell at my kid, boy. Boy? Lady, I'm in my mid-20s. It's perfectly fine and you can wait. My daughter is an influencer, you know, but some things just really tick me off. And one of these things, that is completely different. I mean, cars have doors and motorcycles don't. Me. Fine, okay. Get off. When I got loud, the girl got off the bike and I put my helmet back on. Always wear a helmet, kids. That's from an ER nurse who has seen people without helmets being yeeted into the street or other vehicles. Entitled mom. Don't you yell at my kids. Me. Then don't let your dumb kids sit on my bike and maybe teach your kids some manners. Don't tell me how to raise my kids. I then simply gave up talking to this lady. The boy besides me gave me a "I'm sorry" look, and I nodded at him while starting the engine and leaving the parking lot. The mother yelled, "Jerk!" while I drove off to my day shift. I'm at home now and told my girlfriend this story. She just shrugged and told me, "Welcome to the world of modern parents." Yep, complaining to an elementary school teacher about parents wasn't that good of an idea, I think. So here's the moral of the story. Don't sit on people's bikes to pose. There is a special spot in heck for wannabe biker posers, and motorcycles are just like cars. I mean, you don't jump into a convertible and then tell the owner it's okay because it doesn't have a roof. Call the police? Sure. In our mid-20s, my husband and I purchased and moved into our rather modest first house with our infant daughter. I made a big effort to meet and befriend our neighbors, and all of them warned me to be careful of one particular person, Jane. Jane had lived on the street for 3 years at this point and had earned herself the nickname Big Fat Jane, as she was manipulating, intimidating, and thoroughly awful. Jane ran a daycare from her house, but neighbors on both sides reported hearing her scream at them and leave them unsupervised in the garden. It's important to note that Jane's partner is a police officer. The neighbors were scared of retaliation if they reported her or stood up to her. It seemed Jane would use this to get away with her horrific behavior. Our house had a driveway with a dropped curb big enough for one car, but we could fit both in if you blocked in the first and only used the second car. Parking on the street was very limited, and we had double yellow lines outside our house, not allowed to stop or park there. During some essential roof work, our driveway was taken up by scaffolding, so we parked in the street, and my husband parked outside Jane's house. The next day, when he went to see his car, Jane came running down her path, shouting at him. She screamed at him about his antisocial parking, that his car would be towed, and that he could expect it to be scratched up if he left it there any longer. My husband calmly explained it was a public road, and she did not have the right to police the space. Her screeches at this point were loud enough that I and several neighbors heard and came to see the commotion. Her partner was perched at the door during all of this, saying and doing nothing. When she saw me on the pavement with our daughter, she pointed and screamed, "You'll have the social on you if you don't buzz off. I'll scratch you right up." At this point, I told my husband to come back and we were calling the police. She responded, "Call the police. I dare you. He's," pointing at her partner, "a policeman. He'll sort you out. You won't know what hit you." At this point, my husband looked at her husband and said, "Is that right? And you're agreeing with what she said?" The partner nodded and said, "You need to move or accept the consequences. You call the police, it won't get you anywhere." Funny enough, when I then took out my phone and dialed the non-police emergency number on speakerphone and made a police report, both of them looked a lot less confident. Jane stood there open-mouthed and grabbed her partner and slammed the door, and we haven't heard from her since. Her partner was placed on suspension due to the allegation and further allegations from our neighbors. He then returned to an admin role. After our confrontation, Jane was giving a warning for a public order offense. However, due to a number of reports, her daycare was closed and she is no longer able to run it. Their house is up for sale. However, as she made a number of modifications without proper planning or works people, its price is significantly lower than they expected and they're in negative equity. All because of a parking space. Karen screams at another table for stealing hers and forces them up. So I was scrolling on TikTok and found a story that reminded me of this gym when I was working last summer. At my restaurant, we take 30-minute call-aheads. Absolutely no reservations. If you're in a large party, you need the whole party to be set, but we are lenient if it's, say, a 13 top and 10 of the guests are there. So I'm working a double, and I help at the host stand when I get bored during the slow hours. I remember answering this lady's call ahead for her 11 to 13 top, and it was only around $3.50 or so. I told her no problem, we will put her name down. We have over half our tables outside and clearly 2 tables specifically for larger parties. Only a few minutes go by and it's a little after 4 when she comes in with her mother and I tell her she's more than welcome to enjoy a drink at the bar while she waits for her party to arrive. They go to the bar and then seat themselves at one of the large party tables as they're next to each other through our large open slider doors. I go over and say the typical, "I'm sorry ma'am, but you cannot sit here until your entire party has arrived. It's policy, but you're again welcome to sit at the bar. Difficult guests." GM goes over and very plainly tells Karen what she did was wrong and probably spent 15 minutes going back and forth with her. In the end, she agrees to pay for a full round of drinks for them. I go over immediately, do my greet, and get their drinks and app orders. GM hands me the bill for the round of drinks from the other party's table, and I go over and hand it to her. She immediately is red and fuming, saying there's no— I just walk away and get GM and say that she won't pay the bill, and I keep serving the rest of the guests. One of her friends lied apparently, but promised no drama as it was a special occasion. As I'm at the table talking to Karen's friend, she yells at the manager and screams that how dare she be forced to pay. My manager looks her in the eye and says, "It's not my problem you forced other guests up from their table. You will pay this bill and then you will leave, or I will call the authorities." Insert shocked Pikachu face. She then demands her beverage and apps, so I run over and grab it all to go and bring it right back with her bill for her items. Her boyfriend ends up paying for the drinks, and my manager stood next to her the entire time and said, "Don't forget to tip 20% for your atrocious behavior to my staff." Y'all, I about lost it. She ended up leaving 15 minutes after, and I got a wonderful tip from her party. But I couldn't believe the absolute entitlement that she had displayed over a table when there was an exact same table 6 feet away. Literally, honey, your people aren't there, so duh, we're gonna seat one of the tables. Edit to add. I never thought I'd have to say this, but if you agree with how this Karen acted, you are part of the problem. Edit 2. Our drink prices range typically $13 to $18. We're a tequila bar. Our drinks and food cost money because it's a high-end restaurant in South Florida on the water. Won't pay for my coffee? How about a hotel room, 3-course meal, and breakfast? I used to work for a company in the UK based in London, but with regular travel all around the country. We had very long hours and were required to be on site when work began at 7:30 a.m., but you could be hundreds of miles away. You were allowed to stay away, but you had to get approval from a senior manager, usually only agreed through gritted teeth because of the difficult expenses policy and the wrath of the senior manager who approved the expenses. More on this guy soon. I used to get up early, commute all around the country, often doing 2 to 3 hours in the car at a time. Most often stopping to fuel the car or just have a break, usually grabbing some breakfast and a coffee, because I was often leaving the house before it was palatable to eat breakfast. I was young and conscientious, so would buy my own breakfast, but buy a coffee separately and keep the receipt for expenses. Usually a 5-pound breakfast and a 3-pound coffee. Our expenses policy allowed me to put the whole lot on expenses, but I was conscientious. Anyway, after months of this, I submit my expense claim. My immediate manager approves it without batting an eyelid, as he can see the addresses on the receipts and the timestamps. So once a manager has approved it, the expenses would go to one senior manager to approve for maybe 200 to 300 claims a week. Major trust issues and seriously backwards. One morning, early at the head office, the senior manager comes into my office and tells me to follow him working time directive, which meant that all the early starts and late finishes had to stop immediately because it was breaching policy and the law. So the next time I had to be on site for 7:30 and was 2 to 3 hours away, I stayed in a hotel the night before. 3-course meal and breakfast all in line with expenses policy and working time policies. This continued for about a month because you can only submit expenses for payment in the last week before payday. My expenses went from £100 a month to £1,000 a month. Expenses submitted, manager approved, sent to the senior manager. I get a phone call to come to HQ the next day for a talk with the senior manager and HR. The following day I attend, get an absolute roasting. "What the heck did I say? Who do you think you are?" When I could get a word in, I explained how I was traveling in line with company policy, health and safety legislation, whilst also complying with the expense policy to the letter. HR confirmed, nothing he could do. Needless to say, the policy was changed some months later. I felt much better because I was well rested, fed, and working the hours I was being paid for. Am I the jerk for making my brother leave after he brought his kids to my child-free wedding? My wife and I got married days ago. We decided the wedding will be child-free. We thought this was the best option considering several factors from budget to keeping the order, etc. Everyone got an invitation, but my biggest concern was how my brother, Ramsey, 36, was going to react. Ramsey married young and has 4 kids that he takes everywhere he and his wife go. They're always there at every family event. The kids are grade A hyperactive to say the least. I gave Ramsey the invitation in person, and he read it out loud in a sarcastic tone, then said, "Child-free? Ha!" I nodded, and he got somewhat mad, saying, "Are you serious? But my kids have never been excluded from any event, big or small, let alone their own uncle's wedding." I said, "I'm sorry, but it's already been decided, and everyone has to follow the rules, not just you." He stared off for a minute, then to my surprise, he said, "I totally get it, man. No kids means no kids. No worries." I was glad he didn't start an argument over it and seemed to accept the rule. The day of the wedding came, and Ramsey and his wife didn't show up until shortly before the ceremony began. My best man notified me that Ramsey had arrived and had all of his kids with him. I was legit mad. I went to meet him at the entrance and saw he brought all the kids against me and my wife's wishes. I greeted the kids and asked my sister-in-law to take them back to the car. He loudly asked what the heck was wrong with me. I asked why he brought his kids and who said it was okay. He said no one, but he was planning on bringing the kids all along and figured that by initially agreeing to my rule, then showing up with the kids anyway would get me to agree on letting them stay. I stated this was no event for kids for many reasons and that everyone respected the rule except him. He complained about me disrespecting him and his kids since, again, he's never attended any events without them. In his words, "Wherever I go, my kids follow, period." I told him he needed to leave then. Not only did he call me a lunatic, but a terrible brother and a terrible uncle. He also called me names for agreeing to my wife's stupid rule, saying that if it was him and his wife even hinted he couldn't have the family's kids at their wedding, he would have dropped her right then and there. It was humiliating and loud enough for the guests to notice. My in-laws did too. I told him to leave, and that's when my mom and aunt tried to convince me to let it go and let them stay. But I refused and had him leave after a massive argument between us. To say that I felt absolutely horrible is an understatement. Everyone gave me grief ever since that incident, and they're siding with Ramsey, saying I wronged him and acted cold towards him and his kids when they showed up to celebrate with me and my wife. My dad is especially upset at me for potentially permanently messing up my relationship with Ramsey, his wife, and his kids by kicking them out of my wedding. He quoted, "Ramsey won't ever forget this day." Am I the jerk? You don't care if I change your subscription to premium, do you? So this actually happened just yesterday, and the entitled person in question is my dad. For a long time now, Dad has been asking for my Netflix password, but I wouldn't give it to him. I didn't care if he used my Netflix, but I knew him well enough to know he'd happily give out my password to anybody who wanted it. He had openly admitted that he wanted his second ex-wife to have it. He had continually asked for my password, but I refused. 3 days ago, I offered a compromise. I wouldn't give him my password, but I would log him in and make him a profile. He agreed, so I went to his house to set it up. At first, he seemed grateful. Yesterday, I got an email from Netflix that my subscription plan has changed. I checked and saw that it had been upgraded to a premium subscription. I immediately changed it back, but I would have to still pay the increased price this month. I called Dad and asked if he had changed the subscription. He initially denied it was him, so I told him I was going to have to change the password again. "Oh, I might have done something to Netflix," he quickly said. The moment I mentioned the password, "I was pressing buttons. I don't know what I was doing, but I might have changed the subscription." I told him that he had changed it to a more expensive subscription, but he just said it was only a few bucks more. Then he tried to distract me by asking if I had ever watched Supernatural, as he had supposedly just discovered it, but I steered the conversation back. I didn't believe it had been an accident, but I just told him to be more careful. His story suddenly shifted as he claimed Netflix forced him to upgrade. He said it kept asking him if he wanted to watch it in HD, and he tried to cancel it 4 times. When he had finally accepted, it upgraded his subscription. Of course, I didn't believe that story either, but I learned long ago it's best just to drop things with him. Later that evening, he called Mom. He was mad that I had changed the subscription since it wasn't that much more expensive. Netflix had forced him, and he really couldn't tell any difference between SD and HD. He actually was pouting and told her that I could just cancel his account since he wouldn't watch it anyway. And that is why I had to change my password again. You can't cash that check without an account. We had a hailstorm in my area and my car was pummeled with the hail. Not a huge deal, as most dentless hail repairs will do it for way cheaper than your insurance pays. Call my insurance and they scheduled me for 3 days later on a Sunday of all things. Lady shows up and takes photos and prints me off a settlement check on the spot. With a slight problem being that the check is written out to me and the national financing company I bought my car from years ago. Somehow, when I paid off my car, they never released my title and I never noticed. I now cannot deposit my check without NFC releasing their claim on my car, which has been paid off for at least 10 years by this point. After some calling around and jumping through hoops, I'm told if I go to National Bank that issued my insurance check with some paperwork from NFC releasing all claims on my car, I could cash my insurance check. Fine, but stupid National Bank isn't in my town and it's a 45-minute drive to said National Bank. I verified everything by speaking with a manager at the nearest bank and verified all I needed was the letters, my ID, and the check, and he would cash my check. I show up and head to a teller like the local manager told me to do and presented all of the required documentation. The teller asked me what my account number was. I told her I didn't have one. She informed me that checks over a certain amount could not be cashed if a person did not have an account with them. I informed her that the manager told me that I could cash this check if I showed the required documentation. She informed me that he didn't know what he was talking about and called him over. They had a nice private conversation and collectively informed me that the teller was correct and I had to have an account. Funny enough, as I walked up to the bank, a sign was informing people that if new users signed up for an account and deposited an amount smaller than my insurance check, you would get a $250 sign-up bonus. I asked what was required to set up an account, and lo and behold, it took a whole 10 minutes to set up my new account and about a week for the check to clear and to get my $250 bonus. Transferred everything but the required amount to keep the account open because you had to close out in person. I think it was $10 or under. Am I the jerk for walking out of an interview for the way the guy behaved? This is still a little fresh, and for some reason, when I, 27 male, told it to a friend, they seemed to think I was the jerk for my reaction. I usually work freelance, but a buddy of mine owns a small business and is desperately looking for new people to hire. They asked me to come in for an interview. This was just a formality since he always wanted me for this position regardless. To be honest, I wasn't so sure I wanted the job, but thought it wouldn't hurt to come in anyways. He said I could start part-time and work my way to full-time if I like it. My friend left some other guy in charge of interviews who's a manager that works under him. Not only was this dude a half hour late, but every couple sentences out of his mouth, he'd be telling me to pause because his phone would go off and he needed to respond. I know for a fact it wasn't work-related because who laughs at texts that aren't personal? Anyways, was already annoyed, but what really ticked me off was when he looked at my resume and saw my last name. My last name is Hummingbird. My dad's dad came from Native American background, although he and I actually don't know much about it. This guy sees my last name and laughs. He says, "Wait, seriously, that's your last name?" Told him, yeah, what's the big deal? Guy keeps laughing and he says sorry, not judging me, just still getting used to some of the crazy names people give themselves. Well, first I told him about my surname and what makes him think it's okay to laugh at somebody's name. After I just got up and said this isn't working, I'd rather not work along someone like him. Guy was immediately apologetic and wanted me to come back because his boss, my friend, will lose it. But I kept walking. The whole thing got on my nerves. Couple hours later, my friend is asking me what happened. He wasn't mad, but he wanted to know why I changed my mind. Still haven't told him exactly what it was since the guy looked panicked, so I don't know about getting him in trouble with my friend. But the reason friend thinks I'm the jerk is because it was super rude to just get up and leave when the guy was simply joking around, and sure he wasn't trying to be mean intentionally. Not sure really if I was the jerk for the way I reacted. Edit. Okay, yes, I will be telling my friend about this. I agree, he's got a right to know what this guy is doing and how it could affect his business. Thanks, Reddit. Entitled parent decides to mess with me in the checkout line. I finally had my Karen in the Wild experience yesterday morning. I live in the southeastern US, and we have a popular small box retailer here with a yellow sign in black letters. They are all over the rural south and in many places act as grocery and general stores to the community. I needed to stop and get an item for my vehicle before I ran morning errands, so I dropped in at our local neighborhood store, found the item and a couple of other things I wanted, and got in line. I am very conscientious about wearing a mask when I go out and steering very clear of those who don't. The line was fairly long for a Saturday morning, and I was then third or fourth customer in line. This store funnels all customers into a sort of a tunnel lined with impulse purchases, lighters, candy, magazines, small toys, that sort of thing, for checkout, and there are 3 cashier stations along the line. Only one was manned at that point. The customer in front of me was a late 30-ish woman with a daughter who looked to be about 10 or so. This was entitled Mom and OK Kid. The kid wasn't so bad. She had on a cute dog face mask, but entitled Mom wasn't wearing one at all. She was pushing a half-full cart of items. OK Kid asks for a candy bar, and entitled Mom says it's okay. Kid reaches for, so as the entitled Mom came towards me, I started backing away. She kept coming closer, and I kept backing up, which she noticed. When I hit the cart behind me, she smiled at me and said, "Looks like you're trapped," and kept coming towards me. Well, I walk with a cane. At that point, I raised the cane so that it was between us and said, "Please stop coming towards me. You aren't wearing a mask." She stopped and laughed, then said, "Are you going to hit me with your cane, old lady?" I glared at her and said, "If you come any closer, I will. I'm feeling very threatened." She laughed again, then put her hand up to her ear and said, "What? Couldn't hear you. Say again. Your mask is making it hard to understand you." And laughing. Then her daughter started laughing too. About that time, another employee came over to open the second register, which I was standing directly in front of. Usually they say, "I can help the next customer here." But instead, she said, "I can ring you up, ma'am," to me. I put my purchases down on the counter, and she reached for the first item to scan. Entitled Mom said, "Hey, wait, I was next," and started backing up toward me again, with her cart in tow. The cashier said, "Ma'am, you have already passed me. The next cashier will have to take care of you." Entitled Mom didn't like this, but turned back forward to see the first cashier had already finished ringing up the customer in front of Entitled Mom and had turned her station light off, signaling that she was closed. Entitled Mom said, "Hey, where are you going? You haven't rung me up." The first cashier said, "Sorry, I'm scheduled for my break now, and I will get written up if I don't go on time," and walked away out the door. Entitled Mom is now fuming and turns back to the second cashier. Entitled Mom waits for my cashier to be done with my purchase, then starts to back up again. This makes it impossible for me to leave, as we are in that tunnel, and I said, "Ma'am, you are going to have to go forward and leave the tunnel so I can get out." She stops and says, "Oh, just squish by me. You act like I have the plague or something." I looked directly at her and said, "As far as I am concerned, you do." She huffed and pushed her cart forward and out of the tunnel, and I was able to squeeze by her safely. Behind me, I heard the cashier start ringing up the customer behind me who had a pretty full cart, and I turned and saw that the line behind me had 5 people in it now. The Entitled Mom yelled, "Hey, I was next!" And as I was going out the door, she turned her buggy back into the tunnel the wrong way. Then I heard the cashier say, "Ma'am, you can't come back in here the wrong way. You have to get back in line." Unintelligible barking came from the Entitled Mom as I went out the door. I admitted, I was grinning behind the mask. As I was getting into my vehicle, the first cashier was around the corner of the store having a smoke break. She finished her cigarette, put it in the ash post, and said, "I hate people like that. We love messing with them. Sorry she bothered you." I laughed out loud at that point and said, "Hey, this will make a good story for Reddit." She laughed too and went on in the store. No idea what Entitled Mom did after that, but I noticed as I passed her when I left the store that she was wearing a scrub top for a local pediatrician's office. Think I might make a phone call on Monday asking them how they feel about one of their staff terrorizing those in the community who choose to wear a mask and socially distance. P.S. Ladies, if either of you read this, thank you. I appreciate you being there for us. Am I the jerk for kicking out my sister after she tried to flirt with my husband? I, 27 female, have a little sister, Emily, who's 20. My husband, 27 male, and I have been together since our college days. Back when we started dating, Emily then seemed to have this little crush on my husband, then boyfriend. She would blush in his presence, stutter while talking to him, etc. We assumed that the crush went away as she grew older, and her behavior indicated so. My husband thinks of Emily as the little sister he never had and treats her as such. We've not had much contact with Emily over the years as we live in a different state at the other side of the country, and she's been busy with her schooling. Last week, my parents and Emily were visiting our house for my birthday weekend. From the moment Emily arrived, she would not stop flirting with my husband, from excessively complimenting everything he did to proclaiming things like they would make a great pair, etc. My husband looked very uncomfortable, and so did my parents. I don't know how we got through the dinner. After the evening was done, my husband asked me if there was something wrong with Emily, and why was she behaving like that. He said she made him very uncomfortable and asked me to talk to her. So I found her alone and tried telling her that it was fine if she had/has a crush, but it's never fine to make anyone uncomfortable. I told her that it would be nice if she kept her distance for the remaining 2 days they were here, since he was not okay with this behavior. She said she wasn't being flirty or improper. I told her that she was indeed being inappropriate and that it was very creepy that she would try to flirt with my husband. She got very defensive and said that I was being insecure, and I quote, "If I was really flirting with him, you wouldn't stand a chance." I lost it at this point and told her that she's no longer welcome in our house and should buzz off the first thing in the morning. Emily and my parents left the very next day, even though my dad agreed that Emily's behavior throughout the evening was very inappropriate and that she should apologize to my husband. Mom thinks nothing of that sort happened, and all three of us are being delusional, and that it was a wrong move to kick Emily, and by extension her, out of my house when they had traveled all the way here. Am I the jerk? Karen kept calling me a housewife, so I kicked her out of my house. Just for context, my girlfriend, 24, is the breadwinner in our household. I don't really make that much, but she has a stable job and her parents are loaded, so whenever it comes to big purchases, like our first home and car, etc., she handles it. I usually just try to buy the smaller necessities like household utilities and groceries. Obviously, I get teased and hassled about it from people we know once in a while. I really don't appreciate when this happens, and I've talked to my girlfriend about how she feels about these things. She told me what I do is enough for her, and the only thing that matters is that we are happy. There's a friend of hers who literally just won't shut up about me being the housewife, her exact words. She always passive-aggressively makes public, so I usually just stay silent. We had a small get-together with some of me and my girlfriend's friends, and she was invited. The first thing she commented on was the decor in our house. She then smirked and asked if I was the one who paid for it or my girlfriend. My girlfriend gave me this look like, "I'm sorry," and that really just set me off. After everyone came in, I asked her to come to the front door. When we got there, I asked her to put on her shoes. She asked where we were going, and I told her she was leaving because I'm not dealing with her stupid BS right now. She said it's not up to me since I don't pay for the house, and I told her I would make sure she would have zero fun if she decided to stay. She said her boyfriend dropped her off and that she didn't have a ride, and I told her to go Uber or something. She left, and some people started asking me where she was. I just said she had to go because something came up, but my girlfriend's friends didn't take the story because they overheard what she had said to me and guessed that I kicked her out. I just told them what happened, and they started berating me for kicking her out over nothing, and that if I was a real man, the things she said wouldn't have bothered me. What the heck does that even mean? My girlfriend is indifferent to the situation, but my girlfriend's friends don't seem to understand that it's really annoying to have to deal with that every time I see her. I feel conflicted, and maybe I shouldn't have kicked her out. Am I the jerk? Landlord won't let us out of our lease. I got the place condemned. This is about the company I work for and a trip I took because I had to wire a building for a computer network because the building owner wouldn't. Backstory. Our company was moving a remote site to a new building. As the IT guy for the company, I was asked to look at the new building and get network ports marked out. The landlord refused to put in any low voltage lines, and we got quotes, but they were thousands of dollars. Enter me, my car, and 4 boxes of Cat 6 Plenum. It's about an 8-hour drive, and I was doing about 30 drops. Not a ton, but still, a few days' work in some place that's already built up. And it's drop ceiling with insulation on top. Messy, itchy work. Story. Day 1. We get there Monday morning at the start of the month. It's actually a cool summer morning, and we're from further south, so no one notices the AC not working for about an hour. Slowly, the building begins heating up. It gets to 80 degrees by noon, 85 at 3 p.m. The rooms with floors to ceiling windows are greenhouses. It's absolutely miserable. We've been told by the workers still on site that the leasing company was told there was no AC in our building 3 weeks ago. The other thing is there are still workers on site. The building isn't completed. So much for being ready for a handover day 1. Day 2, we're getting agitated. It's 80 degrees in the AM when we first walk in. It's sweltering. The other guy that came up with me is the facilities manager. He's screaming at people over the phone to fix the AC. We're all exhausted from the heat by 3 p.m. I found a 4-foot hole in the ducting where I opened the ceiling tile. The AC was blowing, but there was no cold air. We are told the compressor is broken. Day 3, more of the same. Miserable in the morning, I'm finally getting the last lines punched in on the patch panel. The AC guys arrive at 10 a.m. They finally fix the unit at 2 p.m. We asked them what they did. They said, "A lot of things." We again said, "What did you do?" The reply was, "We can't tell the tenants." Red flag alert. We contacted our realtor. She said she would look into what was done. She sends an email later that night that says they changed the refrigerant from R22 to R410A. I tell the facilities guy, "No way, dude. That's like putting gas in a diesel motor. They'd have to change out the entire system. They didn't do that in 4 hours. They basically duct taped and WD-40'd that thing back together, and it will run poorly for a month or so, then give out, and we'd be stuck with a replacement." Day 4. Still no running water to some areas. Still workers on site. The AC can't keep up with the noonday sun, and it still hits around 80 by the end of the day. AC runs continuously. We're packing up all the stuff we moved in and moving out. I notice all the fire sprinklers look like they had moved, and the metal protection around the drop tile has fallen to the floor. The sprinklers are no longer protruding from the tiles in places. In others, they are quite a bit lower than they were. Yup, the AC fools stood in the fire sprinklers to fix their lousy ductwork. We are looking for a friendly way out. We contacted the landlord and say, "You haven't delivered a finished building. We're moving out. The lease is broken." Landlord has a 36-page lease. Landlord won't let us out of this lease. It's 5 years. This is not starting off well. We get in contact with the corporate lawyer and the realtor. They both agree we're kind of done for. We are desperate for any way out. I started looking at the fire system. I used to run all kinds of low voltage lines, fire, security, etc. There is no fire panel in our portion of the building. No smoke detectors are hooked up to anything. More red flags. One of our employees that was moving the heavy gear says, "Oh yeah, I meant to mention, I never saw any building permits anywhere." Ding ding ding. They did this build out, including demolition, running new plumbing and power lines, and destroying the fire system without a city permit. Cue the call to city inspector's office. Day 5. I wasn't there for this part, but the facilities manager told me this. The city inspector pulled the permits for the building. There weren't any. He finds multiple violations of city code, red tagged our area, removed the certificate of occupancy. When I told him to check the fire system like you said, he just goes, "Oh no, I have to make a call." He calls the fire marshal. Day 8. Fire marshals arrive on scene. Find no active alarm system in our portion of the building. Red tag. Find the sprinkler riser for the entire building in our area. No water pressure. Condemned the entire building. Basically, they wouldn't let us out of the building because we signed a lease, even though they never delivered a building in any semblance of working order. Called the building inspector, got them smoked, who then called the fire marshal, who condemned the entire building. They're still trying to fight us over it, but we're pushing for them not only refunding our deposit and the rent, which they have already done, but for all of the time spent moving gear in and out, and all of the wiring. Our lawyer says they don't have a leg to stand on, and he's happy for them to pay his fees as well. You need me more than I need you. So a while ago, I used to work as a shift manager at a very popular US coffee and donut chain. The owner of this franchise branch was extremely horrible, power hungry, and a jerk, which seems to be a real trend on this sub. To put how outrageous her treatment of staff was into perspective, I watched this lady training a new male coworker once. He messed up a drink, and she proceeded to throw the drink on the ground and demand he clean it up. She also demanded we include her when dividing tips up at the end of every night. Pretty sure that's illegal, but hey, I was 17 and didn't know any better. Anyways, I had this 30-something female coworker with 2 kids. She was from India and would always bring a little extra dinner with her when we worked together to get me to try foods from her culture. She was such a sweetheart and a key player in this story. At the time, One day, my lovely female coworker comes in extremely upset. She explains that after working 6 days a week, every week for the past few months, she was denied off for her son's birthday party. I immediately told her not to worry, as I was free that day and would work for her. No problem. I come into work early the next day when the owner was still in to let her know I would be taking lovely coworker's shift on her son's birthday. Mind you, the date in question was almost a month away, so we were giving her plenty of notice. The owner says, "That will not be happening," with a smile, and tells me to get to work. Something about her smile told me she was enjoying denying my coworker this day off with her family, and that crap broke something in me. For the next 3 weeks, I stewed. I wrote out my 2 weeks' notice and kept it in a sealed envelope in my car. We were short-staffed and new hires needed training, so I decided to stick it out a little longer so that my other coworkers wouldn't have to pick up the slack. One day, I pull in for my shift and see that the owner is in. I walk in and hear her yelling from the back. The owner is back there screaming at the group of morning shift workers in what I assume is Hindi. She then dismissed them and starts in on my lovely coworker and another coworker in English about how incompetent they are. At this point, I'm done. I get between her and my coworkers and go off, telling her that we are all tired of the way she treats us and that I will not stand to see her targeting lovely coworker anymore, denying her days off out of spite. We go back and forth yelling for a bit, and then she says, "If you don't like it, then get out of my sight." I reply, "I quit. You need me more than I need your crap anyway." She smugly replies, "I'll be needing you to hand in an official notice of that. You can come visit me tomorrow in my office." Little did she know, on this particular day, I had my resignation letter in my apron. Nothing felt as good as ripping that letter out of my apron and slamming it down on the counter, wishing all of my coworkers the best and telling the owner to have fun burning in heck. She took me off the schedule for my last 2 weeks, but I heard from lovely coworker that the owner was having to work 12-hour days to work out hiring new people and training everyone who was coming in. Not crazy compliance, but dang, it felt good to stand up for myself. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that her getting treated like a doormat is her choice and that I won't do the same? I'm 27, female, and my partner, S, 32, male, and I have been together for about 3 years. Our relationship has always been a little odd from the outside. S works 80+ hours a week as a lawyer at a large firm. I work as a policy analyst for the government and at a nice 37.5 hours a week in comparison. Before we dated, he told me that he wants to work up to being a partner and that would require long hours. I told him that I prioritize work-life balance, even if it means a lower salary. We agreed to date knowing this about each other. My best friend, V, 27 female, and her boyfriend started dating our first year of uni and have a rocky relationship. The boyfriend cheated on V in the last year of uni, and he's since been caught cheating again twice. V, against my advice, has chosen to stay with him. S recently got a promotion and, as part of the deal, was assigned an assistant. When I first met her, I kind of got a vibe that she was crushing on him. She was really flirty and very attentive to S, which he pointed out to me first. He said that he'd still keep her on as an assistant, but that he would make sure nothing got out of hand. I wasn't concerned because I've never had a reason to worry that he would cheat on me. One night, V and I got dinner and later decided to go back to my place. S's office is in between the restaurant we were at and my apartment building, so I offered to go drop off some food for him. I asked V if it was okay if we stopped, and she agreed. When we got to his floor, he was working in a glass-paneled room alone with his assistant. I didn't think much of it, dropped off the food, and left. I also want to add that there were lots of other people in the office. As soon as we left, V asked if that was the assistant that I thought had a crush on S. I said yes, that they often work late together. V got angry at me, saying that I was treating this like a joke and that if I want to keep my man, I have to stake my claim or something. I explained to her that I wasn't worried that he would cheat and that I trusted him. V told me that she was certain that he was cheating on me and that I should force him to ask for a different assistant. I was kind of getting annoyed, but it got worse when V said, amongst other things, that S knows he can cheat on me and I'd let him because he makes more money than me, so he doesn't need to respect me because he pays more. S's salary is around 3 times mine, although I have an okay salary myself, around $85K, and don't need him for money. We split bills percentage-wise, so I pay less than he does, but it's equitable and we agreed on it. I told V that just because she's okay being treated like a doormat doesn't mean that I am, and that if he cheated on me, I would leave him. Respect is essential in a relationship. I also said that she had no place offering relationship advice considering her boyfriend is a serial cheater and they fight all the time, and that if she wanted to keep complaining to me, I should start charging her. It was mean and I feel really bad about it now. She hasn't talked to me since. So, am I the jerk? Need a doctor's note when I return to work? Okay. Note, this was before lockdown. A little background. At the time, I worked at a larger organization that had a staff of 1,000 to 1,500 people in a travel-related industry. As we all know about the travel industry, certain times are busier than most, and during those times, non-pre-approved vacation/days off, etc. are blocked out. If you call off sick, you need a doctor's note when you return to work. Generally, the management doesn't care, because it's your sick time that you've earned, but we all have that one day. By the book Bob, we'll call him. By the book Bob got promoted because he was a company man, a yes man, a dude who drank so much Kool-Aid that it oozed from his pores. It was nearing Christmas time, busy holiday travel time, so it's all hands on deck, and several days before and after we are blocked out for those vacation days, etc. This blocking out extended to past the new year. I came into work on Monday and went home feeling unwell. Nothing too terrible, just the feeling malaise. Something a day's rest and a good night's sleep should fix. So Monday night I called in to let them know I was going to take a sick day to rest and recover and be at 100% for the impending holiday. So I call in, and who answered the phone but By the book Bob. I tell him that I'm going to take a sick day since I'm not feeling too well. Without skipping a beat, he says, "Remember, the holiday period starts tomorrow. If you call off sick, you'll need a doctor's note." As I mentally imagine him sitting on the other side of the phone, all excited and happy that he reminded me of the doctor's note instead of wishing me well, I respond, "Okay, cool. You want a doctor's note when I get back, right? Otherwise, I'll get a write-up?" Bob, "Yup, gonna need a doctor's note." Cue malicious compliance. Me, "Sure, no problem." What By the book Bob didn't realize is my personal physician is an older man who gives zero hoots. He's gonna take holidays off. He's gonna take extended time off, cause, well, it's his office and he can. Guess which office was closed until a few days after the new year? Yup. Am I gonna go off to the local non-emergency room on a sick day to camp out for a doctor's note? Yeah, no. Am I gonna pay out of pocket to go to another doctor to get a note so By the book Bob can be happy? Most definitely no. I guess my only choice is to hang out at home resting until the new year and then pop in and get my note. So I do. When I'm finally done with my sick time and get my doctor's note, it's now nearly 2 weeks later. I head back into work and drop off my note to By the book Bob when I get in. "Hey Bob, here's the note you wanted." Bob, "You were gone for a long time, bro." Me, "Yeah, you wanted the doctor's note and I didn't want to get in trouble since you said it was required. My doctor's office was closed until just yesterday." Bob, "You couldn't get the note anywhere else?" Me, "You gonna pay for my doctor's office visits?" I smiled and walked out. Am I the jerk for removing tree roots from my yard? My family and I moved into a new home this spring. We had previously lived in apartments, and we now have our first yard for our kids to play in. The neighborhood we moved into has a lot of mature trees, and this being the first time I've had to do my own yard work, there has been a learning curve. One of my neighbor's yards is separated from ours by a chain link fence. There's a large tree just on the other side of the fence. Some roots from the tree spread onto my yard, and some of them are growing on the surface of the ground. They are visible and are above the ground quite a bit. About a month ago, my kids were running around and playing, and my daughter tripped on one of the roots, fell, and ended up breaking her wrist trying to catch herself. Of course, this was very upsetting to my wife and I, and she pretty much told me to do something about the roots so this didn't happen again. So I bought some tools and started tearing the roots up as best as I could. I got them out to a point that nothing is sticking above the ground anymore and filled the top in with fresh soil and grass seed. My neighbor must have noticed the work I did because he made a comment about the fresh soil. I told him I had to remove some roots since my daughter tripped on one. He asked what I meant by remove, and I told him I dug a bunch out and cut them out as best I could. He got upset and told me that I probably killed his tree. I told him that removing a few roots isn't going to hurt a tree that big and they were creating a tripping hazard. And since they were in my yard, I did what I needed to do to remove them. He told me there are other ways to deal with roots like that, instead of cutting them out and causing stress to the tree, and he would have gladly helped if I had asked. He said that the tree is probably going to die, which means it's probably going to have to be removed, and said that a tree that large is going to cost thousands of dollars to take out. I told him that sounds ridiculously expensive. He said if the tree dies and he has to have it cut down, he's going to ask me to pay for some of it because of what I did to the roots. I told him good luck with that and that I'm not paying anything for his tree. He called me a jerk and told me the previous neighbors at least had the decency to ask for help when they didn't know what the heck they were doing instead of causing damage to other people's property. I told my wife about it, and she thinks the guy is just being a jerk and agrees with me that taking out a few roots from the top of the ground isn't going to hurt a tree that big. She also agrees that there's no way in heck we are going to pay for anything for this guy's tree. We were just making sure our yard was safe for our kids to play in. It's not our fault his tree grew roots into our yard. Your internet is fine, you don't need an engineer. So I work for a company that provides VoIP, networking solutions, and IT support. So I get this call from a well-known angry customer who also happens to be friends with the boss. To top it off, we usually only support businesses and not residential customers, but we sold him some internet on the cheap for his mother's house. People involved: me, Bob, Angry Bob, boss, big boss, and the company owner. The conversation: me: good afternoon, Bob. You sold us dodgy internet. Been trying to call all weekend. Me: sorry sir, our offices are only open 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. But let me take some details for you and I'll run some tests our side to get back to you. Bob: my mother is 86 years old and is a vulnerable person and hasn't been able to watch TV. Me: I understand that sir, but if you give me some details, I can investigate for you and get this resolved ASAP. Bob: no, just send an engineer out tonight. Currently 4:30 on a Monday. Bob ends the call. At this point, I go away, speak to my manager and the boss, get some background, find the details I need to investigate, and the lines are fine. Bob calls again. Are you sending an engineer? Me: I have run some checks on your circuit and it's absolutely fine, so an engineer wouldn't be able to do anything. If you tell me what the problem is, I can help you to try to resolve it over the phone. Bob: no, just send the engineer. Me: okay, but you will have to accept potential charges if the fault is not with the line and is with the local equipment. I really think we should try some line resolutions first. Bob: no, send the engineer. 24 hours and a 270-pound call-out charge later. Bob: the engineer didn't fix the internet. Why am I being charged? Me: as I previously stated, the line checks were fine and the engineer is only responsible for line maintenance. It sounded like it was a local issue. Fine, you get down here and sort out the router. It has to be that router you sold us. Me: I will have to clear this with my boss. Should we go over first line resolutions first? Or at least give me a description of the problem? No, I'll speak to the boss myself. He hangs up. Boss: Dan, just to shut him up, would you fancy going to take a look? Usual charges would apply if it's not a fault with our equipment. Me: no problem. So I go to visit the house. Luckily, Bob isn't there, but his sister is, who's polite enough. It turns out there was an issue with their Android streaming box used to stream international channels, and since they were nice enough, I reconfigured that for them. They also had no other devices actually connected to the Wi-Fi, so I connected the house up, including their security system, etc. The best part of this is that I could have talked him through all of this, as it was very simple stuff, even though they aren't covered, and would have taken about 10 to 15 minutes, but he ended up paying over £500 in call-out charges. Am I the jerk for breaking my promise to my stepkids? I met Will when I was 22. Will was 29 with 2 kids and had newly been widowed. We had whirlwind courtship where he introduced me to the kids and got me involved in their lives very early, first few days after I met him. Will said really quickly he was sure I was the one, not only for himself but also for his kids, that we'd have an incredible happy family life. We got married when I was 23, Will was 30, and his kids were 8 and 6. Our wedding ceremony also included me and the kids making promises to each other, which was Will's idea. Soon, Will shoved all the childcare onto me. I wasn't a stay-at-home spouse. I worked full-time and always have, but he always had reasons for me to do the childcare. Him being sore from doing a physical job, me being better at it since I babysat kids this age in the past and he never had, or girl stuff for his daughter, or cooking or anything. He always had some reason and it ended up always on me. He started playing video games and relaxing from getting home until bed because he was tired and he was bringing in the money and keeping the roof over everyone's heads. Though that wasn't really true. He said he deserved to relax. Then he went out with his friends or brought them back to drink beer and watch loud TV. He developed a major attitude with me and encouraged the same in his kids. They found it funny. He started openly disrespecting me and encouraged them to also. He was the ultimate fun dad, and I got put in the role of the mean jerk. Sometimes they all ganged up on me and mocked me, but also all expected me to serve them and constantly be jumping up to care for them. By the end of the first year, I realized the marriage was a big mistake, but felt guilty leaving because of my promises to the kids. Another year went by, and I realized that no matter how much I tried and how I knew they were only kids, I didn't really blame them. I genuinely hated both of them, and I could not lie to myself anymore and pretend that I loved them. I did not, and I never would. One day, I just walked out, packed up everything of mine and moved out while nobody was at home. I left a note explaining it wasn't working and said goodbye. That was the end. Cue crapstorm from my ex and a bitter divorce, but we both walked away with what we went into the marriage with. Not much for either of us. I had never legally adopted the kids, so I had no rights or responsibilities about them, and I never reached out to any of them again. Honestly, I was overjoyed to be rid of all of them. 15 years have gone by, and that seems like a lifetime ago, or another person's life, but I'm still in my 30s. I was recently shocked to get a message from Tamara, Will's daughter, now 25. Tamara said I betrayed her for life for abandoning them after my promises to them. She said I had a responsibility to never leave no matter what. I know she remembers the horrible way she treated me though. Am I the jerk for digging my heels in with my fiancé concerning surname? My fiancé, 27 female, and I, 30 male, are getting married next year. I've pretty much let her run the show when it comes to the wedding and reception. Her last name is from her biological father, who left when she was 2. Her mother remarried, and she said for years that she can't wait to get married and change it. For 6 years, I've heard about what a jerk this guy is. I'm the last male to carry my name. There are only 4 people with the name, so it's always been important to me to pass it on to my kids. She wants to get married in a Catholic church. I'm not Catholic, but it means a lot to her, so I'm in the process of converting. She wanted to be close to her mom and sister, so I left the job I loved, found a new job, and we moved 4 hours away from my family to be closer to them. Her sister is a recovering alcoholic, so we don't keep liquor in our apartment, despite that I like to have a beer after work. I've made many changes to accommodate her. She's acknowledged it, and I always respond that all I care about is passing my name on, and she responds with a number of days until our wedding. Shortly after we arrived, biological dad contacted her out of the blue. He heard from relatives she was getting married and decided it was the perfect time to reconnect. All of a sudden, I now hear what a wonderful guy Paul is, how hard he's trying, and how wonderful it is that he's back. Often I get home from work and she's gone, only to arrive home past midnight after being out with Paul and her half-siblings. I hate that I don't see her as much, but I know how much it means to her to have a relationship with him. At the same time, after years of hearing her trash him, I'm not even allowed to think bad thoughts about him. She's planning on having him walk her down the aisle, which I don't think is appropriate, but it's her decision. This weekend was the bombshell. She told me that her father brought up the importance of their name, that she's decided to keep it. This stung very badly. I replied that it was her choice, I just wanted to pass my name down. She smiled uncomfortably and informed me that she wanted the first boy to carry her name because it would mean so much to Daddy. I told her that is not happening. She suggested that we hyphenate as a compromise. I told her that there was no negotiation, that I had one thing that was important to me. I had moved heaven and earth to give her what she needed and everything else, but I wouldn't budge an inch on this. She told me I was being unreasonable. I responded that I've been in her life longer than he has, and asked her who it was that she was trying to start a life with, me or him. She started crying and accused me of being jealous of her relationship with her father. My parents and her mom and stepdad agree with me and think she's allowing Paul to influence her. Her sister thinks I was a jerk for asking that question and refusing to compromise. Am I the jerk for yeeting my ice cream out of the window and saying I'd rather no one have it? I, 21 female, have been with my partner, 23 male, for 3 years. Backstory: we get Uber Eats a lot, especially during lockdown, at least once a week. We order ice cream, chocolates, and candies. Relevant to this story is that more often than not, I pay for it. He'll offer half, but payday comes around, and most of the time, he won't pay as he doesn't have enough because he spent it all on his car parts. My problem for the last couple of months, whenever I go to the fridge, freezer, cupboard, what do you know? It's gone. I always ask, hey, do you know where this is? Am I just not looking properly? And he'll always reply like, oh, I ate that already, haha. I always get annoyed because it's not like, oh, I had some already, so it's okay, but more like he'll make shakes using all the chocolate and ice cream, and even though he doesn't like candies, he'll eat all the ones he knows I like and leave the ones I hate. So on to the problem. We got another order, and this time, since they had run out of the large ice cream, they sent 2 small ones. I was over the moon. I was like, yes. Now he has no excuse to touch mine. I was ecstatic and a little giddy. I told him, one's yours, one's mine. Do not touch mine. Last 2 days, I've been having some morning sickness, so it's been unopened in the freezer. I had a little last night when I felt sick, and it made me feel better. Then a little more today with our son, but I've left over half as I want it to last and to savor it. The last day since he was gone, within the first 5 minutes, he's been pestering me and telling me he's gonna eat it, and he's only gonna have a little bit. I've heard that before. I was getting very visibly annoyed, but obviously he was oblivious. It's been the same discussion and argument for 24 hours. Then he goes to the freezer, pulls it out, and puts his spoon into it. I jump off of the lounge, snatch the ice cream, open the window, and yeet the ice cream out into the backyard. I tell him, I'd rather no one have it than you touch it because that is just so selfish. He stomps off into the room. Should mention that I'm a foodie and yet did not eat my ice cream but placed it on the windowsill with my other hand, and when he walked away I hid it in the freezer behind the meat. Am I the jerk for supposedly eating my ice cream after my partner has been selfishly not sharing desserts for months? Karen keeps sneaking in my room, so I set up cameras. For a little backstory, I live with one roommate who used to be a friend. Prior to moving in together, we came up with a roommate agreement together. Within about a week of moving in, she was no longer sticking to the agreement. Within the first few months, she made comments that suggested she was going into my bedroom when I wasn't at home and when I was sleeping. My dog also started acting strange after we moved in. He has always been crated in my room when I am not home, and after moving in, he became scared to come out of his crate and scared to go into the backyard. I hadn't changed anything with him and was worried about what was going on when I wasn't home. After all this, I set up a camera in my bedroom. It is only active when I'm not home or when I'm sleeping, and it only records when there is motion detected. My bedroom is at the end of a short hallway. At the entrance to the hallway, I have blackout curtains set up to allow me privacy going from the bedroom to my private bathroom. My room and bathroom are the only rooms beyond this curtain, so there is no reason for her to be in this area of the home and no reason for the camera to be activated by anything other than my pets. Recently, I posted a video it had captured of my dog while he was being cute. My roommate saw it and became enraged that it is recording audio. I explained to her that it doesn't record anything unless motion is detected, and that if she's not going into my room, she has nothing to worry about. She accused me of trying to record her private conversations. I have no interest in her conversations, just maintaining my privacy in my own room, and more importantly, my dog's safety. Am I the jerk for refusing to take the camera down? Update: I appreciate all of the advice to move out or find a new roommate. Unfortunately, I can't afford to break the lease. I have offered to let her out of the lease, but she refused. As soon as the lease is up, I'm out. Info: a lot of you are upset that I posted the video and made her aware of the camera, so some additional info. She knew about the camera from day one. She assumed it didn't record audio. I assumed it was implied that it did. Neither of us should have assumed. I didn't think twice about the audio because it was not intended to record her conversations or even capable of recording anything more than 10 seconds at a time. But I do get all the concerns and have turned off the audio recording. The new neighbors. Well, I had a heck of a weekend that should have been nice and relaxing. To start, I went to visit my parents this weekend, who are both just yes. My parents live in a fairly expensive and safe public neighborhood that they retired to after a long career life. Nice school in the community, a few community pools, a few trails in the same area. Average homes here are around 1.5 million. But because it's a public community, meaning it has no gate to enter, it picks up crime every few years. Lately, there have been break-ins near the top area of the community. When there is a crime in a normally safe area, this can put some people on edge, reporting everything. My mom got reported for walking the family dog at 7 p.m. on the same loop she does every day at the same time for the past 5 years. A bit on me. I'm 6 feet tall, big beard, bald head, moderately built, and tend to wear button-down shirts when I'm not working. Where my story begins is just outside my parents' place. Since it's a public community, all the streets are public as well. It isn't illegal to park here if you aren't a resident. It's just out of the way of anything but homes, so there isn't really a reason anyone who isn't visiting or living here to park here. I have a brand new Chevy Colorado ZR2, a truck. I parked it literally outside my parents' house and visible from their living room window, which is where we were sitting and talking. I'd say about 45 minutes later, a tow truck pulls up and starts hooking up to the truck. I ran out, yelling at them. Tow truck says they had a call about an illegally parked vehicle. After explaining that it's a public area and it is by no means illegal to park here, I asked for the contact info of the reporting individual. I didn't get much, just a first name, Karen, just for the sake of the story. I asked my parents, and they gave a fair-sized frown like they already knew it had to be her. My parents had new neighbors that moved across the street a few months back. I'll save some of their stories for another time. I'd rather not get too sidetracked. I walk over to the house, see various toys and such all over their front side of their house. A bit messy, but I was messy too as a kid. Knock knock. No answer. Ring the buzzer, which is one of the Ring cameras. I then hear a bit of yelling at her kids to stop running around. Now I know she's home, so I just kept ringing the door. As I'm waiting, I notice that she has multiple cameras on me. Important later. She finally answers the door, asks me what I want, in a jerk tone. I say, in a calm voice, because she seemed a bit annoyed already, "Why did you call a tow truck on my vehicle?" Karen, "You shouldn't be parking there. I've never seen you before. It's illegal to park here if you're not a resident. We don't need convicts around here looking for homes to case." Me, convicts? What the heck? Why would you think that? This is a public street. I can legally park here anytime I wish. I'm visiting my parents and have a right to park here without being towed. Leave my truck alone, or I'm not even going to elaborate. I walked away. Not 10 minutes later, I looked into the window to see two boys, maybe around 10 years old, egging my truck. I ran outside, grabbed the hose, and sprayed the boys and my truck down. Thank God for a thick wax coat. Guess which house those two boys ran to? I decided to leave it be. I'm leaving in 30 minutes anyways. 15 minutes later, a police officer walks in front of our door. I open and talk with the officer. "Is that your truck?" Me, "Yes, it is, officer." "We received a report that the owner of that truck was driving recklessly in the neighborhood and almost ran over some people. After getting out of the vehicle, he yelled at the kids and proceeded to hose them down with a strong water hose." Me, "Officer, that's a heck of a story. Would you be interested in coming into my parents' home? And we'll pull up the cameras while I explain my side of the story." Officer accepted and we entered the house. While we viewed my parents' cameras and I explained the sequence leading up to the current, I explained the full conversation I had with Karen, including her insinuating that I was a convict and that I partially made a threat. I apologize that I should have caught myself sooner. I also mentioned the multiple cameras Karen has at her door. Officer, thank you for your time. I may be back in a bit after I have a talk with your neighbor. 20 minutes and a bit of yelling in the background later. Officer, I've talked with the neighbor about her and her kids' actions. Would you be interested in pressing charges for the destruction of property? Me, no, officer, they're just kids. likely doing what Karen told them to. Were you able to check her cameras? Officer: all right. No, she denied access. She shouldn't be bothering you again, but if she does, please don't hesitate to call the non-emergency line and ask for myself directly. I left not long after. So far, there hasn't been any retaliation against my parents. I do work here, but not where you think I do, mister. So, this whole thing happened a few days ago. Cast: we've got me, IT intern. We've got other intern, engineering intern. We've got secretary, the newly hired secretary on her second or third day of work, I believe. We've got Mr. Karen, the rude guy. Interesting detail. I am this company's CEO's daughter, but got internship through regular channels and HR, so no one knew it at the beginning. I will also be using present times because, yes. On to the story. So I'm working away with another intern, and I'm in the same office that the secretary works in. We are working on the new production line in the factory, and I'm working out some database kinks. I made that database, and I'm mighty proud of myself. Because the dress code for interns is non-existent, and the company's dress code in general is pretty lax, I'm rocking a pretty blue skirt and elegant black blouse. Also, I'm a blonde girl in her 20s. Suddenly, Mr. Karen barges in and starts to yell at me. I caught only parts of that, but it included a lot of really mean names. It took me a while to piece the whole story together. Apparently, the guy was supposed to sign an important deal with a client, but someone, presumably the new secretary, made a mistake in the client's name, typing it into the file, turning into a bad word. I can't tell you the name, of course, but because of the way the client's name was misspelled, it turned it into a bad word by accident. So, Mr. Karen is shouting at me. The other intern is terrified, and I have no idea who this guy is. I don't work with people outside the production circle, clients, or anything. I just make the apps and databases that hold them. I try to tell him as much, but Mr. Karen's louder than me, and he says I'm in big trouble, lost us a client, and blah blah blah. I kept most of my cool, as I worked in retail for a long while before, so you know, devils don't scare you anymore if you've been the assistant manager in heck. He says he's taking me to the CEO. So naturally, I go to the CEO's office. Mr. Karen comes in, all respectful suddenly, and starts explaining the situation. As he's about halfway through the first sentence, Dad, the CEO, interrupts him and goes, "Wait, let me know what she came to say first. She's working on the line starting on Monday, so everything has to be done today." Since I'm already there, I tell Dad about the issue with the system and the fact that we will need to make a reboot that will make 2 other lines stop as well. He schedules the reboot for 1800 the same day and sends me on my merry way. Mr. Karen started to get the picture because he didn't stop me when I went out. I hid in the toilet to write this stuff down for my friends and reported this guy's awful behavior on the way home. It turned out Mr. Karen was supposed to fill those things himself, but he pushed it onto his secretary, and she misspelled the name in the document. Mr. Karen got a warning. Secretary got told to not accept documents from Mr. Karen anymore. He is to fill every single document himself, even those that usually would be secretary's responsibility. And I presume he met the real secretary at some point. I met secretary on Friday while rebooting systems for the new production line. Seems like a really cool person. She's also working the afternoons exclusively at this site, so you can't meet her before 17:30 unless you drive to the metalworking site. She also got a reprimand, tough, as she did misspell a client's name, resulting in a bad word on official papers. So you know, I do work here, but not where Mr. Karen thought I did. P.S. I still have no idea what department or site Mr. Karen is at, but I hope his computer crashes so I can go and fix it. Am I the jerk for canceling my niece's college fund upon discovering what she's been doing to me and my wife for months? My wife and I struggled with infertility for years. We're still trying more options, but we're beginning to lose hope. I have a 16-year-old niece that is like a daughter and a friend to me. Considering I'm doing well financially, I've decided to take care of her education and start a college fund so that she could attend a college of her choice. My brother and his wife, my niece's stepmom, are of course aware of that, and they appreciate it very much. They always talk about what a generous, loving uncle I am, unlike my younger brother. I've been dealing with a series of unusual, unexplainable events, like receiving texts at work from someone pretending to be my wife, informing me of some big news, like her being pregnant. or finding mysterious envelopes in my car when I'm at my parents', and the envelopes contained letters from someone also pretending to be my wife, and again telling me she was pregnant. My wife and I had no idea who's been playing us like that, and had many that made our suspect list, including my brother-in-law. Last week, I was visiting my brother's house, and my car was parked in their driveway. I was sitting with my brother and sister-in-law, but my niece left for a few minutes, then returned. I finished my coffee and said goodbye and left. While I was approaching my car, I noticed a sign on the windshield. I took a look, and the sign read, "I'm pregnant," written largely. I was confused because I knew no one from this neighborhood and suspected someone who knew me did it. I called my wife, and she again said this was false news. I took the sign and went back to my brother's house to help figure this out. He said someone must have left it on the wrong car, but I explained it happened before. He just shrugged, but sister-in-law pointed at the sign and said the writing looked similar to my niece's writing style. My brother told her to stop, but I called my niece to come downstairs and asked her. She denied, but got nervous and admitted leaving the sign on my windshield, as well as sending and leaving letters and texts pretending to be my wife. But didn't have ill intent, just did it for some laughs. I blew up, telling her that she was out of line to think mocking me and my wife's suffering and playing us for months was funny. I said I was mad, I was disappointed, and won't ever be looking at her the same. I informed her, my brother, and sister-in-law that I officially canceled the college fund I started for her due to her cruelty and disrespect for us. She broke down, saying she meant no harm or disrespect and was just messing with/teasing me. My brother said I can't actually make this decision based on a small mistake my niece made. He said this is for her future that I was giving up on, and my decision will have a lasting impact. I cut the conversation and left after he tried to talk me out of giving her this harsh punishment. But to me, this was no punishment, just realizing she didn't deserve my hard-earned money. Brother said I exaggerated. He actually thinks punishing her by taking away electronics and having her do work around the house should be enough punishment, not canceling the fund I started for her. But I already told him canceling the fund was not a punishment, but a reaction from me upon finding out what she's been doing for over 2 months. Also, she did apologize profoundly and said she regretted what she did, but still insisted she didn't do it out of hate or ill intention. She loves my wife, and my wife loves her. I'm the closest to her in the whole family from when she was younger, and she always says I'm like a second father to her. You want an email notification of every check-in? Okay, boss. This just happened today. I work as an integrated circuit design engineer. My team is mostly based in the Bay Area, but for some reason, my current project is being headed up on the East Coast. We haven't met the project manager in person, working remote due to lockdown, and it turns out he is a bit more controlling and overbearing than we are used to. Now, chip design isn't the same as software development, but it has some similarities. We use a version control system to check in changes to the design to make sure we can all roll back if there are errors or whatnot. It works great. In order to keep the database manageable, we typically don't check in too often. Only when we make a significant change we want others to be able to see. So we would do a few check-ins on average normally. Anyway, this new project manager came down with an edict last month that one of our KPIs, key performance indicators, one of the ways they evaluate our performance, will be how many check-ins we do. Predictably, people have started checking in new versions of their design for every little thing they do, and it has become harder and harder to comprehend how the project is going as the history is all muddled now. The project manager has configured the version control system so he gets an email for every check-in so he can keep tabs on us. During my last one-on-one a few days ago with the project manager, I told him the team didn't want to be evaluated on check-ins anymore because doing too many check-ins is counterproductive, but the guy wouldn't budge. We are getting to the point in the project where we have to start hammering the designs with tests to try and find faults. We do this by generating many thousands of files that have test sequences in them. These are called test vectors. Then we run a program that sends our design random samplings of those test vectors. Anyway, for traceability, we check in these test vector files in the version control system. So this morning I was on Slack with a few team members and we come up with an idea. We usually just make a zip file of the test vectors to check in once, But there is a performance argument we can make to just check them in individually as raw text. So, cue the malicious compliance. Project Manager wants an email from every check-in? Fine. Project Manager wants to evaluate us on number of check-ins? Fine. We wrote a script that makes each team member check in a certain amount of the test vectors, tens of thousands for each of us. This will obliterate both his KPI results and his inbox. Could happen to a nicer bloke. We just launched the script 30 minutes ago. Haven't gotten an email from him yet, presumably because his email inbox has melted down. Edit. He just called my cell. He was surprisingly good-natured about it. He just basically said he got the point, and that was pretty clever. Then he asked some more project-related stuff. Sorry that the outcome didn't have more fireworks, but I don't think we'll be doing tons of check-ins anymore. Victory. Thousands of dollars turned to rocks. Today, we had trucks drop off some concrete and non-treated lumber for the building materials department. I work in this department. Both of these categories of product cannot get wet. If they do, then they cannot be sold or must be sold at a reduced price. The bundles of wood and pallets of concrete are unloaded shortly before I get to work and clock in the afternoon to work a closing shift. So I arrive and all this product is outside. This is normal. I check the weather and we have about 3 hours until rain is forecast. Okay, it will be close, but I can get it done in the time frame. So I begin. I bring inside a few pallets while also helping customers. We are mildly understaffed today. Well, Mr. Manager says the pallets cannot be inside because they block the aisles. This is the issue. We don't have enough employees in my department to work product and help customers. He is correct about policy saying not to block the aisles, but we do this all the time so we can work together on product and help customers. Doing both is part of the job. I wanted a clear answer. My associates and I all want a clear answer. So 30 minutes into me working, it begins to absolutely downpour with crazy lightning. About 2 hours before it was forecast in the weather. So instead of all the product being inside, it was outside so it would not block the aisles. I normally would not let this happen and just bring it inside and take getting chewed out. But today I figured if I was going to get chewed out, I was going to get chewed out for following the rules. So product is outside and it's raining sideways. Manager now is not happy. The forklift is also outside and covered in rain only because he doesn't like it being inside. And half of the lumber and concrete is already toast. He then asked why it was all outside in the rain, and I reminded him about what he told me, and also reminded him about the operating procedures that he was angry with me for not following the previous times I have blocked aisles with product to keep it out of the rain. At this point, 50% of the concrete bags are saturated through and begin to harden into just big rocks. And all of the MDF and particle board is blistering and falling apart. So he gets to explain why the store had a couple thousand in markdowns today to his boss. And his boss likes me, so I doubt any of this will ever come back to bite me. Feels good. Am I the jerk for saying I don't want to do gifts anymore with my family because they come with conditions that I only find out about later? My parents have a habit of giving a gift and then later adding conditions on. I'll give a couple examples. I got a gift card for the mall at Christmas, thought it was just a gift, but then, weeks later, after I had made plans of how to spend the money, sports gear, my parents said the first thing I needed to buy was school supplies for the spring. Then I could use the rest on fun stuff. Then after that, I'd need to buy clothes for school to replace the clothes I thought were fine, but then I could spend the rest on myself. After they made me buy all that, nothing was left. I felt like all I got for Christmas was the hassle of being made to go out and buy things I don't want. When I get gifts for my birthday, my parents held it over my head, like to say that on a family vacation, I'd be the childcare for my siblings' nieces and nephews, or else they'd take back the phone and hockey gear I got as a gift. When I asked for money for a school trip, my parents gave it to me, but then told me a month later that I had to miss a game to help my dad with housework to repay them for paying for the trip. I find it frustrating when a gift comes with secret conditions that I don't find out about until weeks or months later. It feels less like a gift and more like a favor to call in later, or something to hold over my head. So when my birthday was coming up this year, my mom asked me what I wanted, and I said I'd rather skip gifts with the family. My mom asked me why, and I told her that I think gifts at least the way our family has done them, are more stressful than nice. It seems like they treat gifts as something with conditions, but aren't clear what those conditions are when they're offering a gift. So then it feels like signing a contract that I wasn't allowed to read when I accept a gift. I have no idea what I'll owe, and for the next few weeks or months, I'll be waiting for the other shoe to drop. I told her I'd rather skip the family part and the gift giving and just do something chill with my friends. My mom was upset with me for saying stuff about tradition and how she doesn't do that, and that I was cherry-picking frustrations when most gifts aren't like that. I said that I felt like it was more often than not. She told my dad about the conversation, and he was really upset with me, saying I was being ungrateful and that when I was living under his roof, there were going to be conditions. I can't just go and do whatever I want whenever. I said okay, but I'd rather not have those conditions be linked to gift giving and holidays because it makes holidays an unpleasant time for me, and that he can have rules, but he can't make anyone take a gift if they've decided they don't want to accept gifts. I was grounded for talking back like that. Am I the jerk for having told my parents no birthday gifts? Am I the jerk for making my daughter, who's 17, move her cat's litter boxes into her bedroom? A few months ago, my daughter finally convinced my husband and I to let her get a cat. 3 cats specifically. They were kittens together and came as a package, and she said she really wanted them. We've only ever had a dog, but we're willing to give this a try as long as she promised to take care of them. In most respects, she's done a decent job. She always feeds the cats on time, plays with them every day, and seems to get along with them really well. The only problem has been the litter box. We honestly never expected this to be an issue when it came to cats, since our daughter takes the dog for walks all the time and has never complained about picking up doggy doo, even in the most unpleasant of circumstances. But she absolutely hates cleaning the litter box. When I asked her why, she said that it smells absolutely nothing like doggy doo, and it's far worse, more nauseating smell, which does seem to be true. The vet told us everything was normal, and even a couple cat-owning friends who have been over said that it smells exactly like any other cat they've come across, and nothing's wrong. Recently, my daughter started forgetting to clean the litter box, and that smell fills the house impressively quickly when unattended. I cut her some slack and chalked it up to her busy schedule, and often found myself having to clean it, but it became more of a regular occurrence. Finally, I overheard her on a conversation with her boyfriend where she admitted that she had been forgetting on purpose for a few weeks to try and get out of the chore, and I decided enough was enough. She came home from school the next day to find that all 4 litter boxes had been moved into her bedroom, and I sat her down and had a talk with her about how this was unacceptable and that the consequence would be that the boxes would have to be moved for 1 week to a location where she couldn't just ignore the smell. I was surprised by how strong her reaction to this was. She got really angry and then started begging me not to make her do that, and how it was such a cruel punishment and that she had learned her lesson and would clean it from now on. I said that we could move the boxes back out after she proved that she could clean them for a week, but this was how things were going to be for now. I also told her that she's not grounded to her room, but she will have to sleep in there. No sleeping on the couch to avoid it. She's been not talking to me since I've instituted this and acts like it was horrible of me, but I see it as a fair consequence and learning opportunity. Was that too harsh or appropriate? Am I the jerk? Entitled mom thinks I should pay her kid for work he didn't do. First off, I am disabled. I'm a one-legged amputee and had a stroke a couple years ago. I've recovered mostly from the stroke, some paralysis in my left arm still, but I can still do most things I did before. I also live alone and am pretty independent. One thing I can't do is mow my yard. I live in a very big lot. The backyard is big enough for a couple more houses to be there, and the front and side are almost as big. I do have a riding mower, but I have a tendency to fall off when I use it. One leg and poor sense of balance, not a great combination. A neighbor's teenage son would mow it for me once a week for $50. He graduated and went into the military, so I had to find someone new this year. I have a friend who will mow for me for free, but I don't like to impose on him, and I figure most teens could use an extra $50. Last year, some new neighbors moved in, consisting of a mother in her early 40s and her 2 sons. I didn't know about the boy's father, but she apparently had a number of boyfriends who were always coming over and staying overnight. The older son, about 17, was always outside working on an old car he had. I got to talking to him, and he said he was trying to get it running but couldn't afford all the parts he needed. So I offered him the same deal I had with the other kid. I'd pay him $50 a week for the kid to use my riding mower to mow the yard once a week. He jumped at it. The first couple of weeks went pretty good. I'd go ahead and pay him in advance, and then he mowed the yard. That way, if I had to leave or was napping, he didn't have to wait for his money. The third week he came, he asked if he could use my mower on his yard. His yard is tiny compared to mine. My backyard alone is almost twice the size of his front and back together. I told him to go ahead. I was going to a friend's house and would be back later and paid him. I came back that evening, but it was too dark to really see the yard. The next day, I saw that my yards had not been mowed. I rolled over to his house with its newly trimmed yard and knocked. His mother answered. Now, I've never seen his mother wearing anything but an old terry cloth robe and house shoes. She apparently doesn't work or really do much of anything. I asked for the kid, and she said he had gone somewhere with his friends. I thought that was strange with everything going on. Not surprising though. I've never seen anyone at that house wearing a mask. I wear one anytime I leave the house. Anyway, I didn't see him that day, so my yard didn't get mowed. A couple days later, it rained for a bit, so it was getting pretty tall. A few days later, he came over, wanting to mow. He asked about the pay, and I told him he had never mowed it last week, so I'm not paying him this week. He made some comment about rain, and then about it being so high this time. I told him if he had mowed when he was supposed to, it wouldn't be so tall. He had already been paid for work he didn't do, and I wasn't going to pay him again. As he walked away, I heard him say, "Jerk." Shortly after that, his mom came over in her bathrobe and house shoes. I answered the door, and this was the conversation. Entitled Mom, "You need to pay my son." Me, "I paid him last week for something he didn't do. I'm not paying him again." "But it rained last week. He couldn't mow. You can't blame him for the weather." Me, "It didn't rain until 2 days after he was supposed to mow. He didn't have any trouble mowing your yard." "My yard is not that big. Yours is huge." Me, "Which is why I have a riding mower." "Well, just pay him and he'll mow it." Me, "He still hasn't mowed it after the last time I paid him." "Well, I won't let him mow it unless you pay him. Then what will you do?" "I have a friend who will mow it for free. I was really just helping your son out." Entitled Mom, sneering at me, "You're just a cripple. You don't have friends." Me, "Yeah, I'm a cripple, but I guarantee I have more friends than some lazy, bloated jerk like you." Yeah, that really got her mad. "You'll be sorry. I know people who will kick your sorry butt. You'll be sorry you spoke to me like that." Me, "Thank you. That's definitely loud enough for the microphone to pick up. Now turn around and smile for the camera." I pointed to the security camera mounted on the eave of my house, pointed at the front door. Me, "I'm sure the police will enjoy hearing that you just threatened me. You know it's a felony to threaten a vulnerable person." Probably not, but it sounded good. She stuck her hand up in front of my face and took off back to her own house. I heard the door slam. Didn't see her for the rest of the day. My friend came over and mowed the next day, and I saw the kid out by his car watching. That night he came over and apologized. We had a long talk, and honestly, he's not a bad kid. He's had a tough life. His father left when he was little, and his half-brother, who's 14, lives with his own father and only comes to stay occasionally. His mother doesn't even try to do anything but sleep and go to bars at night and bring home guys. She takes any money he gets. That's why he wanted to get paid. She insisted that he gives her money. He's been trying to get money for the car parts, but she always takes his money. So I offered, instead of paying him in cash, I would just buy him the parts he needs. He loved the idea, and by mowing before noon when she was still asleep, she wouldn't even know he was mowing for me. He wants to move out, but he has nowhere to go. I found out he turns 18 in a couple months, and I've told him he could stay with me then, as long as he obeyed the rules of my house. He's worried about what his mom might do, but I told him she can't do anything once he's 18. Besides, she tends to hide her face and go inside whenever she sees me. He told me she's scared I might take the video to the police, and she's already been in trouble with the law. Besides, I happen to know the owners of that house are selling it, and she'll have to move soon anyway. Funniest part of this is that the camera doesn't even work. The previous owner put it up and didn't take it with them. I just never took it down and have never even messed with it. Karen thinks she doesn't have to get a job because of her anxiety, expects us to pay her way while she does nothing. My friends and I are all moving out of our parents' houses into an apartment September 8th. There are 4 of us. The apartment is about 2 hours away from where we currently live and is near our college. We all agreed to split the cost of rent. This was months ago. We are all 19 to 20, by the way. This is how irritating my friend is. She has really bad driving anxiety and doesn't have a job. She has been sitting at home all summer doing nothing. She applied for a job at the beginning of July to a place down the street from the apartment. Her mom drove her to that interview and back. They offered her a position and gave her all the paperwork to fill out and fax it to them. She did that. Orientation was scheduled for July 20th. She called and had the place reschedule it for August 7th because she couldn't find anyone to drive her there, and she said she felt sick. She never went to August orientation and pretty much ghosted the place, so that's out. That would have been perfect for her because all she would have had to do is walk down the sidewalk. It was literally about a 5 to 10 minute walk down the street. This isn't the first job that she's done this to either. It's always the driving anxiety excuse. She has her license and has drove on the freeway many times. The rest of us have jobs. The apartment has a pool and common areas that people hang out at. She thinks she's just going to lounge at the pool all day, meet cute guys, make new friends and all that. She's really excited to move in. That's what she told another roommate. I think she just doesn't want to work. But she needs to though, because that was a part of the deal. You cover your share of rent. If she can't pay for her share of the rent, then she can't stay with us. End of story. I thought the group was on board with that. I mean, she's had all summer to find a job, and she keeps ghosting the ones that want to hire her because she has to drive to them. Pretty soon, it's going to be time to move in. And it's like, if you think you're just going to sit in the apartment all day, taking online classes and then lounge by the pool, you are sadly mistaken. The rest of the group would love to do that, but we need money to survive. We told her she's gonna have to get over her driving anxiety and find a job, or figure out a way to get money. She got mad and started yelling at us, saying we don't understand, and it's not that easy to get a job. We have even tried to help her apply for jobs, and she screamed, "I don't need your help. I'll figure it out myself." I know her parents aren't willing to pay for her monthly rent, and boy, are they eager for her to move out. Probably because she mouths off to them constantly. My one roommate thinks we should cover September's rent for her, and maybe she will find a job once she's in the area. I'm not too hopeful on that. I think if she isn't working somewhere by September 1st, then she can't move in. End of story. But that's just me. According to another roommate, I'm being too harsh and unsympathetic towards her. I should be willing to give her a chance to get a job before saying she can't live with us. What would you do in this situation? Would you let her move in with you or not? Please let us know. If I were OP, I might reconsider moving in with this group of friends. Entitled parent loses it and stops a woman on crutches from getting in the elevator. So him, 20, was in Primark at the time, which is a well-known clothing outlet in the UK for people who can't afford to fork out on big clothing brands. I was wandering around the men's section on the second floor, where there's a busy escalator one side of the shop and a lift on the other. As I got closer to the lifts, I heard raised voices and went over to look because I'm nosy. There was a woman in her mid-20s standing in the open lift. She had a kid in a pram with her. Let's call her Karen. In the doorway of the lift, there was an older woman around 50 who clearly had an issue with her leg and was using crutches and one of those boots they use for stuff like a broken leg. Let's call her Jane. With Jane was a younger man, maybe in his late 20s, but I'm not sure he said anything during the entire encounter. So Karen was in the lift, with her pram angled to stop Jane from getting into the lift, which is definitely big enough for more than 3 people in a pram. In a raised voice, she was telling Jane, "I'm claustrophobic. I can't have anyone in the lift with me." Jane was asking if Karen would please just let her into the very big lift so that she didn't have to wait for it to go and come back. Karen wasn't having it and just kept repeating, "I'm claustrophobic," over and over, telling Jane to use the escalator instead. Jane gestured towards her leg and her crutches and asked whether Karen did this in all lifts because there was no way she could get away with doing that every time someone got into a lift with her. When Jane started calling Karen out on this, Karen's story quickly changed to, "With everything going on, I'm worried about getting sick," she said without having a mask on to a lady who was wearing a mask whilst stood in an extremely busy shop. By this point, it would have been quicker for them to go down and send the lift back up one at a time. Karen started shouting, "How do I know you're not sick?" And Jane just responded with a very calm, "How do I know you're not sick?" So Jane yelled, "How do I know your leg is actually broken?" Weird turn, lady. By this point, there were around 10 people, including me, pretending to look through clothes racks while we all stared at what was going on. It's rude to stare, so you have to be polite when watching the drama. Finally, about 3 different staff members appeared, about 5 minutes after the commotion started, and asked the ladies to take 2 separate lift trips. They let Karen go down first because she was already in the lift. Shame. I heard Jane saying to Karen as she left and to the staff members, "This is how it's going to be for a long time. She needs to get used to it." I imagine relating to lockdown and sharing spaces again. I wish something more was done, but people kick off so much around here that you kind of just want them to get what they want and leave ASAP. Everyone went back to their shopping after the women were split up, but I remember making eye contact with a maybe 16-year-old boy who was also watching, and we just burst out laughing in the middle of the shop. Did you know night auditors are supposed to know everything that happens in the hotel, even when we aren't here? So I just had a total Karen. She walked in the front door and went to the elevator only to return a few minutes later. Said she requested stayover service for today, and the only thing done in the room was the bed was made. Now remember this, because it comes up later. I apologized to her and immediately checked the housekeeping stayover log. Nope, no service was requested for her room today. I relay this to her and tell her that under lockdown protocols, she has to request service when she's adamant that she did and knows someone was in her room because they also took the cash tip that she left for the housekeeper, but the housekeeper didn't do anything other than make the bed, according to her. I tell her that since she wasn't on the log for the day, there's no way housekeeping would have even gone into the room because our housekeeping managers make the boards for departures only and then check the log and handwrite the stayover rooms on the boards. She knows she only needs new towels and an extra pillow, so I go get those for her and come back. She's still pretty peeved and asks for a manager's card. I hand her the AGM's card because we always give out his card over the GM for stuff like this. We only give out the GM's card for super huge problems, and this wasn't a super huge problem in my opinion. She then said, "You don't have a general manager?" So I tell her that we do and hand her his card, which has the same info, just different names. She seems satisfied and leaves. 2 minutes later, she's calling me, screaming at me because someone was in her room. "Someone was in my room. The money I left is gone. My bedding is all over the floor, not even on the bed, and my sheets are all wrinkled, crumpled up mess, and I'm on vacation. I want to know who was in my room while I was gone. This is totally unacceptable. I can't believe you would let somebody into my room to steal from me." I asked her politely to stop screaming at me, because what good is it doing besides upsetting me and making my headache I've had for 2 days from wildfire smoke worse? I tell her to start over and tell me what apparently was stolen. She again says the money she left on the counter for the housekeeper wasn't there and no service was done to her room, but clearly someone was in the room because the money is gone. I tell her again that she wasn't on the stayover log for service for today, so there's no way housekeeping would have even gone into the room. Then it hit me. She just said the bed wasn't made. How could the bed be made when she came to the desk, but now all the bedding is on the floor when she called me 2 minutes later? Karen, your room wasn't serviced because you didn't request it, and you're yelling and screaming at me to justify your own mistake? She then starts making demands out of me. Wants to know who was in the room. Wants me to call and wake up a manager and have them come to the hotel and talk to her about this now. Wants to know why I don't know what housekeepers were working. Wants to see housekeeping boards for the day. Wants me to find a key log for her room and see what keys were used on the lock. She wouldn't stop yelling and screaming at me over something I literally had no control over. I finally started yelling back to get her to shut up long enough for me to speak so she could hear me. I told her that I am the night auditor. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. is when I work, and everything that happens from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. is a mystery to me, unless it was important enough to be added to the pass-on log. Housekeeping info is never in the pass, or unless there was a problem, which is rare. I told her I don't even know who our housekeepers are. I could pass all of them on the street and not even know who they are because they start coming in at 8 to 8:30 a.m., long after I've left. She's not letting up on the screaming and said that the bed is so gross and dirty looking that she doesn't even want to sleep on it. So I tell her she has two options. Wait to discuss this with management in the morning, or I can move her rooms, both of which she declined. She insisted that a manager call her right now. Tell her I can call, but they probably won't answer due to it being almost midnight at this point. That wasn't good enough for her, so the yelling continues. Now I'm beyond ticked off, and tell her if she doesn't stop yelling at me over this, then I would call the police and have her removed. Oh, this set her off even more. Now you're threatening me? You are literally threatening me? I'm going to call corporate and make sure you get fired for threatening a guest. And I'm a Shiny Metal loyalty member. You can't do that to me, and I'm going to demand all my money back. I explained that I can call the police and have whoever removed if I feel they are disruptive to either myself or my guests, and that every member of the management team will back me up 110% on my decisions to call the police department for problem guests. She was yelling so loud, and our walls are pretty thin. I know someone nearby had to have heard her ranting on the phone to me. I've had her folio pulled up on my screen since the start of her chaos. She's here 2 nights, tonight being the second, so I'm pretty certain, given her loyalty status, that she assumed we resumed normal stayover service and is trying to blame me for her being dumb and forgetting to request service when it was discussed with her at check-in. The second part about her last rant was she wants her money back. Karen, you're here on points. You aren't even paying for anything. And after this, I'm making sure my boss doesn't refund you your points for disrespecting a member of the staff the way you did. Also, you might want to check with your husband about your missing tip money, because he went up to the room 5 minutes before you walked through the front door. I called my AGM and felt horrible for calling him and waking him up, and explained what Karen's demands were. He laughed about her demands and said he wasn't going to call her tonight and would be more than happy to speak with her in the morning when he comes in, and told me to not hesitate to remove her if she keeps yelling and screaming at me again. It's been an hour and a half, and I haven't heard a peep out of her, praying that I'm able to get out of here before she comes to speak with my AGM, because I'm not going to be nice to her if I see her face again. Update. I received several texts this afternoon after I awoke from my drunken slumber. Yes, I went home and drank at 7 a.m. because this lady had me in tears after this. The lady called the AGM and gave her side. Apparently what happened was she waited until 5 p.m., long after housekeeping had left for the day, to request service. And by service, all she said was she wanted the bed made. We have a PM house person who is literally only here to keep public spaces like the lobby clean, handle guest requests like bring extra towels and toiletries to rooms, and to sanitize the gym and the pool after each use. We have our pool and gym on a reservation status, so they have to be sanitized once an hour. The house person is a part of the housekeeping team, but is not trained in cleaning the rooms, let alone trained on how to do a stayover service. So when Karen came to the desk on her way out the door to attend a concert, she briefly stopped by the desk and asked the PM shift agent to have the bed made in her room. That was all. Just the bed, and said she left a cash tip. So there really was money involved. What happened was the PM desk agent tried to tell her that there was no housekeeping service available, but Karen was short with the PM agent and cut her off and said she didn't need everything, just the bed, and then left abruptly, so the PM agent tasked the house person with making the bed. Well, the house person, as I said, is not trained to make beds, and so the house person did the best they could, which really was just pulling the duvet and top sheet up to the pillows and smoothed out the duvet and made the bed look as nice as they could. House person took the tip money and left the room. So Karen assumed by asking for the bed being made, she was getting full stayover service, and when she came back to the hotel at 11:30, was upset because the only service she got was exactly what she had asked for, the bed to be made. My AGM said she was nice to him on the phone and even admitted she got a little out of line with me. A little is a big understatement. This lady had me ready to quit hospitality altogether because of her screaming. My AGM assured me I did everything correctly, even with the idle threat of calling the police since she was disrespecting me and disobeying my requests for her to speak to me normally. So that's what really went down. Waitstaff, please tell me if my parents are jerks or not. Servers, please let me know your thoughts because this is causing a lot of family strife. 4 people in the family, 1 that is in a wheelchair, 1 that uses a cane, and 2 non-disabled family members. We all go out to eat as a family a couple of times a month in fancy restaurants, chain restaurants, and local restaurants. Here's some behavior that truly bothers me about how my parents act to waitstaff. 1. My mother's tone is smarmy, and she appears to think everyone is an idiot. Example, we were out for Father's Day at a chain restaurant, and the server we had was new. My mother is very particular about her food and drink, i.e., I want my bacon crisp or I will send it back. One time I said to her, do you think anyone wants their bacon not crisp? There's no reason to point that out to a person when she's not even cooking the food. She got iced tea, but didn't feel she had enough ice or enough lemon. She asked the waiter at least 5 times, where is that extra ice and where is my lemon? The poor guy kept saying we ran out of lemon, but we're getting more and I will bring it out to you as soon as possible. He finally came out with a big cup of ice and with a whole coffee cup full of lemon slices, at which point my mother said, well, we're almost done with our meal, so I don't need it now. 2. It is difficult with a disabled person in a wheelchair dining out. First, the difficulty of where to put the wheelchair where it's out of the main path of traffic. My mother does not like that and feels we should be able to sit wherever we want to sit. If there's even the least little bit of something like sunlight shining in on someone's face or a draft, she will insist that we be moved to somewhere else of her choosing. 3. There are many people who are not comfortable with disabled people, especially those who are profoundly disabled and may not be able to speak clearly. When waitstaff takes our order, my mother insists that whoever it is come right over to my brother in his wheelchair and attempt to figure out what he is saying that he wants to eat. Example, we went to a very fancy restaurant last weekend. The waiter was a very nice man, and I was standing between my mother and father as he was taking everyone's order. As I said, my mother is very particular about her food and wanted dressing on the side for her salad. When the waiter didn't say, to her immediately after she said she wanted her dressing on the side, she said, are you paying attention? He said, ma'am, I'm writing this down. When it was time for my brother's order, he was still standing in the same place, and she said, why don't you go over there and ask him what he wants, because you're not going to be able to hear it from here. Guess what? Unless you are familiar with him and how he speaks, no one's going to be able to hear him. Instead of just telling the waiter what he wants and letting the poor waiter get on with his job, she has to basically make him stand there trying to understand my brother, and a lot of times looking very uncomfortable. I feel like the man's doing his job, and he doesn't need to be made to feel uncomfortable because of how my mother wants to act. 4. Tipping. Neither of my parents have ever worked in retail of any type, not to say any type of restaurant either. They believe 15% is a great tip no matter what. I cannot tell you the amount of arguments we get into over this. At the same fancy restaurant referenced above, our waiter got hung up trying to cash out our order. I could see him, so I knew he was waiting for some of the people in front of him to get finished. My mother says loudly, every extra minute this takes, your tip is going down. This man had been an excellent waiter. I said he is back there trying to get the ticket, and there are people in front of him who are also trying to cash out their customers. That means absolutely nothing to her. I would say 95% of the time, I add at least $5 to $10 to the tip, just because I'm so embarrassed, not only at their cheapness, but at their general behavior. I work 2 jobs, and I understand what it's like to work for a living. I've tried to explain to them that tips are vitally important, and that when you don't tip, that's basically stealing out of your own waiter's pocket. My dad has said before, I don't really care about that. That's not my problem if the restaurant owner doesn't want to pay them. Thoughts? And I apologize to every single person who's ever waited on us. I told both my parents, if I waited on you and you acted to me like you act to everybody else, I'd throw the food in your face. Neighbor complained to the HOA about my yard. So, I have a Karen for a neighbor. She's a grumpy old jerk with a live-in son in his 40s and no other family or friends. And when I say she's a Karen, we're talking to the point that she came into my property to yell at our landscaper about a boulder he was installing on our property. Something about believing it would fall over onto more of our property. A few months after we moved in, we receive a letter from the HOA saying they had received complaints and asking that we make sure we're mowing, watering, and maintaining. I chalked it up to moving into a nicer neighborhood and made an effort to mow twice a week instead of my normal ones, added a little time to the sprinklers, and figured all was good. Apparently, it was not all good, as we received another letter stating the complaints had continued and the HOA wanted to talk with us to see what the problem was. I should note, we had just moved in not that long ago and hadn't landscaped the back yet, so we were letting our dogs pee on the front at night, which led to the inevitable patches of bright green grass that grow stupid fast. Now, I'll freely admit, I don't keep my yard to the level of some of my neighbors, but it was in perfectly good shape outside some green spots in an otherwise average-looking yard, and I do my best to keep things mowed and looking decent. Turns out, Grumpy Jerk had taken real offense to this and started complaining to the HOA. The hearing ended up being mostly incoherent rambling, but the bottom line was she didn't like how our lawn looked with the green spots. While the HOA agreed this was not her business and definitely not theirs, I decided she was right and we should stop letting our dogs out in the front to pee, as I also don't like the green spots. Now I put them on the leash and let them do their business in her yard, Red Tree Lawn. And I'm clearly not the only one, as her entire yard is now covered in pee spots and dead spots on her actual lawn, which my dogs don't step on. I'm pretty sure she's complained about everyone with a dog, and now the entire neighborhood takes their dogs to her yard. The best part? She actually does a crappy job taking care of her own lawn. Weeds and crabgrass everywhere. She just waters it almost non-stop. So today I got to report her to the HOA for her yard looking like total crap. If it were any other house, there are much worse, I wouldn't care at all. But this lady wanted lawns without spots, so I'm just doing my part to enforce her rules. Edit. To everyone hating on HOAs, they're hit and miss for sure. But in this case, they didn't do anything but tell me someone complained, and then told her I wasn't violating any rules and they weren't going to be involved. Also, HOAs are often surprisingly easy to take over. You just have to skip your whining about how terrible they are and do the work instead. If the HOA is that bad, talk to some neighbors, tell them you're going to run for the board and get them to vote for you. Then help others do the same. And remember what you hated about the previous board. Be forewarned, everyone finds a reason to complain. No one is willing to help out. Am I the jerk for turning a family vacation home into an Airbnb and charging my cousin to have her wedding there? Some background. My grandparents owned a 4-bedroom lake house with about an acre of land for about 25 years. Through the years, they've hosted many family events and people visited often to get a free getaway. Last year, they wanted to move into a nice old folks home that's basically a resort. To do that and finance the rest of the years, they sold their main condo and put this one up for sale. I bought it at what was a fair rate at the time. It has since gone up in value about 25% due to the recent housing surge. I just finished with some renovations and officially got it listed on Airbnb as a side hustle. This summer, I've gotten lots of requests from family to visit, and I've said no because it's being renovated. I also told them that I intend to use it as an income source, not a family vacation home. I got some pushback, but held firm. Well, now my cousin just got engaged and they want to plan a May 2022 wedding on a specific day that has significance to them. This will end up being over Memorial Day weekend. My cousin Jean called me and asked if they could have it at the lake house since there's so much land for an outdoor wedding, and she and her fiance met there years ago. His family is friends with our family. I told her that I anticipate renting it out that weekend and that she can have first dibs for the days needed and sent her the link to reserve it. She then realized this would run her close to $6,000 plus deposits and service fees, so really like $8,000. She flipped out, saying that this is a family event and a family house, so I shouldn't charge. She then said it should be like my wedding gift. I told her, Jean, my wedding was 3 years ago and you got me a set of knives, which I do like. It's not really fair to say I should be giving you basically $6,000. She flipped, called me greedy and a terrible family member, and hung up. Since this, my parents, aunt, and uncle, and one sister all told me that I was being greedy as well. My brother, who helped with the renovations, is on my side 100%, and my grandparents told me they'd love to see a wedding there, but said they sold me the house with no conditions, so they won't pressure me. But I've been getting so much flack from a couple of people in my family. Edit. I'm done responding to comments now due to how many I've gotten, but to answer some common questions. In purchasing it from my grandparents, I made it clear that it would no longer be a family home and that I would be using it for an income stream. They knew this before selling. Jean and I are not close. She's one of 13 cousins on that side of the family. We are 7 years apart and we see each other probably 1 to 2 times a year at most. Part of my thinking for charging is that I don't want my place to turn into the de facto family spot. It was not cheap and I had to take out a mortgage to pay for it. For people not from the US, Memorial Day weekend is probably the most popular weekend for pool parties and lake house rentals, etc. It's literally the most valuable weekend to own a lake house. I told her I'd give her first dibs on it before opening it up to anyone, but it will easily get rented that weekend otherwise. The current price that people have called ridiculous is based off what the surrounding places of this size are going for. Since listing at that rate, it has been getting booked up super fast, and I've been encouraged to raise the rate. It is not overpriced for its market at all. What I would charge is actually less than what the average venue would charge for the amount of guests she wants. She'd be saving about 40% from what a traditional venue would charge. I would also only charge the normal rate, not the holiday rate that Airbnb told me I should, and would for anyone else. So that is effectively a 30% discount off the bat. My Karen sister demands to be my realtor. I am a real estate flipper. Early on in my career, I met up with Tina, a realtor of 25 plus years who showed me a home that I ended up not buying. We weirdly hit it off as a sort of mom/daughter vibe. She's about 30 years older than me, and I'm the same age as her daughter, and became sort of a mentor/mentee situation. Tina took me under her wing, taught me half of everything I know, found me deals, found me people to buy my fixed-up places, and basically taught me the ropes. She handles situations I'm still learning to handle, like when a foreclosure auction goes wrong. I'm definitely just starting to learn. Tina is very experienced. The problem: my younger sister, Penny, 26, female, is about to get her real estate license. We were having dinner with our dad, and our dad says to me how great it's going to be when Penny and I are working together. I gave him a confused look. Penny then piped up that once she got her license, she'd be handling all of my flips purchases and sales because she is family. I told her that if I was looking for my own house, sure, I would go with her. For my flips, I work with Tina exclusively because Tina had connections that I did not, such as discount flooring and other such things, and Tina got me a lot of business and sales. Cutting Tina out would basically remove at least 1/3 of my sales and end my discounts at a lot of places as friend of Tina, and I'm not willing to do that, especially in these kinds of times. Also, Tina will stop giving me real estate tips for good flip properties if she's not my realtor. Imagine how rude it would be for me to get a tip from her and then use my sister to buy the property. My sister and dad are now upset with me, and no amount of explaining can make them understand that this is a business decision, and I simply can't afford to burn this bridge. I told Tina what was going on, and Tina so very graciously offered to help mentor Penny, like she has been with me, and Penny was having none of it. Penny is so offended that I would continue to give my business to someone outside the family. I think I've done more than enough to help my sister here, but my father and sister think I'm the jerk. I feel like I might be the jerk because you are supposed to prioritize family, but then again, I feel like it's unreasonable for me to take a huge pay cut and loss of all my resources just so my sister can get sales, which again will be fewer due to Tina's clients not buying them. So, am I the jerk for not hiring my sister to replace Tina? Update. Plot twist. Working with me was not Penny's idea. Our father told her, of course I would hire her when she was out of school. We're family. Penny is a little bit naive and a little bit airheaded is the nicest word I can come up with here. I'm sorry, I love my sister, I promise. It's 1000% plausible to me that she simply just believed my father without coming to me about it. Penny then felt like I reneged on the deal to employ her when she brought it up so casually when we had dinner, as in her mind it was settled and done. She apologized, and we are both annoyed at our father, who caused this communication mess. I plan to talk with him when I'm less salty about it. Penny has said she's sorry for turning down the mentorship idea. I hadn't told Tina because I was hoping Penny would reconsider Tina's offer, and that she only said no because she was angry with me in the moment for breaking my word, but realized I had never given it in the first place, and it was all our father. I'm going to cautiously link Penny and Tina up, but I'm giving Tina a warning about Penny's potential behavior and a complete okay to cut things off if my sister behaves unacceptably. To the person that asked if my father had funded my business, no, but my late mother did. She left me and my sister a significant 25% each part of her assets, which was in the mid six figures for both of us. My dad got the rest, but he has plenty of his own already. He used to love helping us out before Mom passed, but stopped entirely when we received the inheritance from Mom because he said we didn't need any more help, which, fair enough. I've done well with my business. Penny has been smart with her share and invests in the stock market. Our dad has taught her. To everyone calling me an evil flipper, I specialize in foreclosures and homes nobody wants. Homes that can't even get renters. Homes you can't even get financing for because they're so bad. I fix them up and make them habitable homes again, when previously they are not fit for human living. If that's evil, okay. I've evilly expanded the amount of available housing. Karen demands to move in with me and bring her 3 kids with her. I, 23 female, and my husband, 26 male, recently got married and we just moved into our first apartment, which is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. The second room will be my husband's game room. We just finished moving in and we furnished the place, and obviously my family helped us move in, and for that I made them dinner in my new place. While we were having dinner, my sister, who's 33, asked if she could live in my second bedroom with her 3 kids. I told her no, because this is mine and my husband's first place together, and we wanted to be able to live alone. She got so upset and started to yell at me, telling me that I'm selfish and how could I leave her and her kids to sleep on the streets. She lives with my parents, where her and her kids have their own rooms, and I told her she needed to leave and that she would not disrespect me in my own home. My parents told me that I need to help my family. My parents don't want my sister to live in their home any longer because she is messy and doesn't offer any help or even clean up after her own kids. My parents expected me to just say yes and allow my sister and her 3 kids to live in our second bedroom. I've recently been getting texts from my family saying that I need to step up and be the bigger person. So, am I the jerk? He gets exactly what he asked for. This happened when I, female, 20 at the time, was a junior in college. Here's some context. I had taken a long weekend trip to Florida with a friend of mine to visit her brother and go to the Universal Studios Fright Night Halloween event, which was awesome by the way. We had an amazing trip and we were on the plane about to head home. This was only my second time ever with air travel. We didn't have much when I was growing up, so vacations were not a regular thing, and the ones we took were low-key. So there I was, just excited to be flying in my coach seat, waiting to take off. And we kept waiting. It became clear that there was a problem with the plane when the flight attendants started calling various passengers to exit to be placed on different flights, so they'd make their necessary connections. Eventually, after around 40 minutes, it was just my friend and I, plus around 6 other people. And then it was our turn to leave the plane. We were sort of near the end of the group, tromping back out into the waiting area. One couple, probably in their mid-50s, had stormed up ahead of us, and by the time my friend and I emerged from the gate entrance, the rude husband was already berating the pair of attendants, who, to their credit, remained poised and calm. They tried to reassure him, but he was talking over them. "This is unacceptable. You better get me the same seats we had on that flight." He had the first row in coach, the one with no seats in front of it, and therefore the extra leg room. By then, the rest of us had gathered around, and the attendants began addressing the whole group, offering reassurance, filling us in that there was a critical problem with the plane, which made me very glad for the change despite the inconvenience. The rude husband was going off through all of this, and when the attendants left to make arrangements for us all, he and his wife sat there and he continued his commentary to his poor wife. "Unacceptable! How dare they? They better have the same seats," and so on. Shortly after, the attendants returned and the man practically rushed them. "I demand you make this right." The attendant smiled and said, "You guys are all set, sir," and she smiled at him specifically. "I'm very happy to tell you that we have a flight leaving shortly and we were able to get you and your wife the exact same seats as you had booked on this previous flight." Rude husband, "I should hope so. That's the least you can do." And he huffily returns to his seat. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just waiting. The attendant then turns to us and she says, "And I'm happy to let everyone else know that you'll all be flying first class with us today." Rude husband was furious and immediately jumped up to demand why they weren't flying first class while the rest of us just sat there in a state of stunned glee. The attendant just informed the man that she had given him his request and didn't stick around for more of his treatment. The wait wasn't long, and soon my friend and I were boarded into the Unicorn, fabled place that is first class. As a poor air travel newbie, it was like some fantasy land. Huge seats, real hot washcloths, and though we weren't old enough to partake in the free cocktail, we did get to choose from a basket of distinctive Pepperidge Farm cookies. And the food, we got a whole meal, which was truly delicious, with real crystal salt and pepper shakers at each place setting and actual metal cutlery. Meanwhile, Rude Husband is irate. My friend and I were in the last row of first class, which only had around 8 seats, and we could hear him going off on the coach attendants, going off on how those kids don't deserve first class, and how they should have gotten them. We're older. They should be respected, not some kids. Someone else who was in first, not from our original plane, caught on and was quite tickled with the man's ire. Then the best part of all happened. The flight attendant in our section overheard Rude Husband's tirade with language specifically directed at my friend and me. Who do these kids think they are? As unworthy of the honor he should have been granted. The attendant shook his head and addressed me and my friend. I'm sorry about that. Let me take care of this for you. And he closed the curtain to the coach cabin. Rude Husband realized what was happening, which makes it even better. I got one last look at his red, irate face before he was gone forever. It was glorious. Am I the jerk for not paying 50% of the rent? I moved in with my boyfriend 4 months ago, and we agreed that I would pay half of the rent and utilities. I am not on the lease, and the utilities are in my boyfriend's name. We have a 2-bedroom apartment. The second bedroom used as a combo home office for me and music studio for him. Then, 3 weeks ago, his brother moved in. I came home from a weekend trip with my sister and found him there. No discussion beforehand. I was upset. My boyfriend swore it was only for a week at most until his brother moved in with a friend. So he spent a week on the couch in the living room. Well, to no one's surprise, that didn't happen. The friend decided he didn't want the brother to move in. Given that the brother doesn't work, doesn't clean up after himself, and is a general jerk, even my boyfriend admits this about his brother, I can't say that I blame the friend. My boyfriend says he can't kick his brother out when he has no place to go, and begged me to give him a couple of months. I had started packing my things. I reluctantly agreed, and boyfriend ends up moving my desk into the living room where I have no privacy while I work, and his music stuff into a corner of the bedroom where we are basically tripping over it, so his brother can have a bedroom. I told boyfriend he has 2 months to get his brother out or I would move out. It gets to the time of the month for me to send money to my boyfriend for bills. I send him 25% of the rent and 33% of the utilities instead of 50% for both. Boyfriend is upset, saying that is not what we agreed on. I told him I also didn't agree to live with his brother, and I'm paying what I feel is fair given that. My thinking is that every apartment I have shared, you pay rent by bedroom and utilities by person. Boyfriend starts freaking out, saying that he can't afford that and that I agreed to his brother staying. I told him that I agreed to not move out. I did not agree to financially support his brother. He told me that I can't just change our agreement, and I pointed out that he had when he added a third person to the apartment. Boyfriend insists he doesn't have enough money to pay that much. He is short on money, and his old roommate moving out is one of the big reasons I moved in. Boyfriend says that he will end up having to not pay something and that it will hurt his credit, which he's been working on rebuilding. He tells me that he is already short because he's having to spend more money on groceries with his brother there. I flatly refuse to pay for more groceries. I am refusing to budge. Boyfriend insists that I'm trying to hurt him financially because I'm angry with him and being petty. I am angry, and I know that I can make bad decisions when I'm mad. However, thinking about it, I don't think I should have to support his brother. Living with 2 other people should cost less than living with 1 other person. However, I am doubting my own judgment. Am I being petty out of anger? Am I the jerk for not paying 50% of the rent? You want every request to go through you? Okay. I work in a law firm, and my job is to prepare legal documents for our clients. We have one client who recently hired an expat to work as its new general manager, whom we shall call Mr. Know-It-All. We never had problems with the logistics with this client before he came along. His first order of business was to email us the following. Dear law firm, as the new general manager of client, I want all the legal documents being requested by our employees to go through me first. I know it is not the standard procedure in our company to copy furnish me when they email you, but do BCC me for every request they send you. All legal documents will now only be made or reviewed upon my approval. We initially complied with his instructions, but it takes days before he gave his approval. Now, I have been working with this client for over 5 years, and I know what documents are time sensitive. So I drafted the urgent documents and BCC'd him with a note that states, kindly secure Mr. Know-It-All's approval prior to the execution of this document. After doing this with some of the requests, I received an email from Mr. Know-It-All which states, hey, could be any person too. Didn't I tell you that all requests should go through me? No matter how small or urgent it is, I want you to ask for my approval, no exceptions. Please do use the final document I sent you. I don't care about the legal parlance of your country, I want it worded my way. Also, I want all the emails sent by our employees to you printed and handed to me, including those made prior to my employment in the company. Now on to the malicious compliance. What Mr. Know-It-All doesn't know is that contracts must be worded in conjunction with our laws. Authorization must contain words that use specific words required by the government agency you are dealing with and so on. We also bill our clients per page regardless of what it is. We consider it billable. I followed his instructions to the letter. You want every request, even if it's urgent, to go through you? Sure. You want contracts worded your way? Sure. You want authorization worded your way also? Sure. You want all the emails printed? Sure. The results? Contracts that are up for renegotiation and renewal were late or get rejected by the other party due to Mr. Know-It-All's wording, and it cost the client some money. Some government agencies didn't honor some of the letter of authorization, which also cost the client some money. Printed emails also cost the client money. But one particular email I received a few minutes before I got home was worth the malicious compliance. Dear could be any person too. We would like to request for the attached documents to be made. This will be used for Mr. Know-It-All's working visa. We weren't able to apply for his visa due to the lockdown. We only have until tomorrow to submit the documents. Knowing Mr. Know-It-All wouldn't reply to emails I sent him until at least a day after, I requested for his approval the next day. They ended up submitting the documents late, and Mr. Know-It-All got fined for it, but not enough for deportation. The client racked up a hefty bill for 1 month, but Mr. Know-It-All toned down after that. We can't share a driveway anymore? Fine, enjoy your tiny driveway. When my significant other and I moved into our house some 20 years ago, our neighbors on one side were an elderly husband and wife who we got along with very well. Our two houses shared a driveway that ran from the street to the alley behind the houses, and we each had our own parking area in the back. The driveway was set up so that about 2 feet of it was on our property, with the rest on the neighbor's property. The driveway was right up against the neighbor's house and about 8 feet from ours. We all made it a point to not park in the driveway so that we didn't block each other's way and had no problems for 15 years. Sadly, the sweet neighbors passed about 5 years or so ago, and their house was bought by Mike, a man who regularly bought old houses to rent or resell and who clearly didn't care about anything except profit. The first time that we ever met Mike was right after a car had hit our house. The driver had a stroke and lost control of his car while driving down our street. The front of his car was actually inside of our house. So here we are, freaking out because a car is literally sticking out of our house, surrounded by a crowd of onlookers, police, and emergency workers, when Mike saunters over and introduces himself by saying that the whole driveway plus part of our garage are on his property. We tell him that he's wrong, but that this is not the time to discuss it and we'll get back to him later. We do some investigating and discover that the property line is exactly where we knew it to be, and that the map Mike was using had the property line overlay off by about 2 feet. Nonetheless, Mike continues to harass us and tell us that we can't use the driveway any longer because he's going to rent the place out and it would be a liability to have us driving on his property. Fine. We had often talked about putting in our own driveway, so now was as good a time as any. Mike was quite pleased when we told him that, At least he was until he learned that the new driveway was going in right next to his driveway along our property line. He tried to talk us into putting the driveway on the other side of the house, obviously so that he would still have use of the full existing driveway, which sat 2 feet onto our property. The look on Mike's face when he saw where the surveyor drew our property line was absolutely priceless. The line left just barely enough room for a car to fit in on his side, and he couldn't widen his driveway because it already ran right next to his house. So we used a chunk of our lawn on that side to install a nice wide driveway with Riverstone gravel so that it would be obvious where our driveway ended and Mike's very narrow blacktop driveway began. Mike never spoke to us again. Am I the jerk for refusing to financially assist my uncle? 15 years ago, my family's brush with poverty. 15 years ago, my family suffered a series of unfortunate events that forced us on the edge of poverty. Fortunately, through the generosity of our extended family, we managed to make it through to the other end, if just barely. This generosity meant that much more, considering that most of my extended family themselves suffered from financial hardship. The exception is my uncle. At the time, he was several years into his career as an engineer at one of the top engineering firms, and yet entirely ignored my family's plight. While my family struggled, Jeff was flaunting his 6-figure BMW, which is his right, of course, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel some resentment, but I understand that this resentment stemmed from a place of entitlement. Today, my uncle's bid for financial assistance. Fast forward 15 years, and fortunately, my family are in a much better place. I've since graduated almost a decade into my career, and I'm in the fortuitous position of being able to ensure that my family never has to worry about money ever again. In those same 15 years, my uncle has founded his own engineering firm and was wildly successful until lockdown forced his business into involuntary administration. The situation is now dire enough that several months ago, my uncle began asking the extended family for financial assistance. But what he needed was beyond what the extended family could provide, though the extended family did do the best that they could. I've thus far kept silent. Unfortunately, that silence has not gone by unnoticed. Am I the jerk? My uncle called me earlier today asking for a $10,000 loan to keep his son enrolled in his son's private school. He tried to sell me some sob story about how disruptive it would be to my cousin's development if he would be forced to change the schools in this pivotal development period. Frankly, I don't see how any of that is my problem. Had my uncle supported my family when we asked him for it, I would have gone to the moon and back for him, as I have done for other members of my extended family that did help my family. But he didn't, so why should I? Am I the jerk? The parking ticket. A little backstory. We have a doctor who has been staying at our hotel for many months, and she has been a pain in the butt since the beginning. She wanted fresh out-of-the-box towels to keep, parks wherever she wants, including in handicap parking, basically treats us like her own personal servants who must greet her only as doctor, pick the fuzzies from the towels, open this, store this, etc. Well, one day I go into work and I read in a previous shift report how doctor got a parking ticket for parking in a handicap parking. Big shock. As I finish reading and I open all of the apps I need to start my shift, the phone rings and the caller ID says it's the doctor, but on the other end is my coworker. In utter confusion, I say, auditor? She proceeds to say, yeah, it's me. The doctor found me in the hospital and told me about her ticket. I can hear the annoyance in her voice, so I cut it short with, I'm really sorry, auditor. There's nothing I can do for her, but how are you? After the chit-chat, we hung up and I went about my business. 10 minutes later, another call from the doctor. At this point, it's slightly annoying, but whatever. So she tells me about her ticket, and I say, ma'am, I really am sorry, but what would you like us to do about it? She demands to know what guests come in after 11. I told her I would not be able to look into that as I was not on shift at the time, and told her that it may not have even been a guest. Ma'am, the police do patrol the area at night, and we are across from a busy complex. Again, she demanded, and again I told her that is not something I could assist her with. She asked if the manager was in, and I said yes, but she may be getting ready to leave as she has been out sick for a few days prior, which she already knew. The doctor returns just as I had walked the manager out, so she witnesses this exchange from her car. The doctor corners me, and the following exchange happens. Doctor: who came in at the time of my ticket? Me: ma'am, there's no way for me to know how you got a ticket. Is the manager here? No, she just left. Well, did you tell her? Yes, but there's nothing we can do about this ticket. Well, I need to know who came in at 11. Ma'am, you told me what time your ticket is timed for, but I was not present. It may not have been a guest. There's a restaurant, a complex, and the police patrol nightly. Doctor: I have a hard time getting up in the morning, and there's never parking out front. Me: ma'am, again, I apologize that you received a ticket, but all I can do is advise you to not park there because it is illegal and you may continue to get tickets. This is private property. You have to know why I got this ticket. It is your job to know what happens in this hotel. Me: private property or not, in this state, it is illegal to park there. Myself, nor this hotel, nor anyone else in it are above the law, and we cannot help you with this. The doctor stormed back to her car with a menacing, I'll be back. After she left, I called my manager, and we laughed our way into the solution that 1, doctor is crazy, and 2, it's okay to say, I'm not discussing this with you further. The doctor returned several hours later and caught me in another position to corner me. Doctor: there's a car in handicap that doesn't have a sticker. Me: I can give you the number to the local police, and they could assist you with that, or I can call for you. No, that isn't the point. We are all guests here. Me: you're right, you are guests. We all must follow the same rules. I advise you not to park there so you don't get further penalties, and I would advise anyone else of that as well. Do you even have handicapped people in-house? Ma'am, we have been sold out for multiple weeks, and we have several rooms that follow ADA guidelines. As you know, it would be egregious to ask for their medical limitations and handicap status. Doctor begins stammering about her ticket once more. I interrupt her and say, Ma'am, if you want to discuss your ticket further, you can call the officer who wrote it or plead not guilty and discuss it with a judge. I'm not discussing this with you further. I walked away and called my manager. 2 days later, she saw the manager, but never brought up the ticket. 3 days later, she complained to my coworker that she didn't appreciate my advice not to park there, nor that I offered to report the other car. Now the doctor avoids me, and I have time for valid foolery from guests. Am I the jerk for revealing to my wife's family we didn't purchase our house? To start, I want to mention that my wife and my mother, who's deceased, never had a very strong relationship. Yes, they were cordial to each other, but they had many disagreements. Mom passed away and left me a one-story house as my only inheritance. No one lived in it after she renovated it, so it looked fairly new. My wife was happy and excited when we moved in, and she posted a video on social media and wrote that the house was bought with our money. I didn't know about her saying that until later. Her aunt was visiting from a distance to see the house my wife told her we had purchased. We sat to eat and chat a bit, and her aunt brought up the house's value, asking how we could afford to buy it so suddenly. I was confused as my wife went on about putting money we've saved together towards buying it. I asked what she was talking about, and her aunt said my wife told her the house was bought with our money and cost this much. I corrected her, saying this wasn't true because this house belonged to my mom and she gave it to me after her passing. I added that no, we're not doing well financially to be able to afford this house. Room went radio silent. My wife's aunt said, "What? I'm sorry, I didn't know that." My wife's cousin side-eyed her and said, "So, isn't your mother-in-law the same mother-in-law you hated for years? Shame she's not here so you can thank her for leaving you this nice house." My wife was stunned at this point and excused herself to the bathroom. She didn't come out until they left. Then she blew up at me, asking why I told them the house was inherited from my mom and making her look like a liar in front of them. I redirected the question at her and asked why she had told them otherwise. She said there was no harm in showing off our new property and that people will appreciate us more for saying we bought it with our own money instead of inherited it. I argue that this was wrong and unfair for my mom, even if they never got along. She argued that I ruined her joy and humiliated her in front of her family, and because word got out, now everyone knows and will think she is a liar, when I could have simply played along, since my mom wouldn't possibly mind it or cause an issue over it now that she's gone, so it wouldn't matter to her. I stormed out after arguing with her and refusing to admit I messed up by not being a part of her lie. Am I the jerk? Edit. I didn't know about what my wife was doing up until that dinner. I then discovered the social media post and how many family and friends thought the house was purchased with our own money. I even have no idea how long this has been going on. Am I the jerk for refusing to refund my parents? I, 25 female, have never been on good terms with my parents since my mother, 45, has a princess complex that my father, who's 50, has no trouble condoning. Ever since I was a kid, I had to make my happy moments about my mother because she gave me the gift of life. I had to get her presents on my birthday, my graduations, my most amazing moments in life, and when my college letter came, my father congratulated my mother instead of me and took her to celebrate. He showered her with gifts for the accomplishments I did, and I only got a "good job, baby" every single time. Not only that, my mother was obsessed with the men I dated. She's young looking and has taken care of herself all these years. This has caused people to believe that we're sisters instead of mother-daughter, and she can't stand that anyone prefers me over her. Some of my boyfriends had broken up with me since they realized they were in love with my mother. I don't know if she had cheated on my father with them or what, and at this point, I don't care. When I left for college, I went low contact and just did the bare minimum, so they kept paying for my expenses. I know, crappy, but meh. At some point, I met my now husband, Alan, who's 26, male, and at first I was reluctant to introduce him to my parents since I thought I knew how it was all going to end. It took me 2 years to finally take him home, and I don't know if it was all the things I told him about them or just luck, but Alan never gave her a second look and did the bare minimum too. Obviously, this upset my mother, and when I was 24, after Alan proposed to me, I went no contact with them after a fight. Because Alan had the audacity to not get her something in a day so special for her. Planning the wedding made me sad. It made me realize that all these years I waited for them to change, and as naive as I was, I thought that my wedding could be the last chance. I called them a few months before, told them that I would love if my father walked me down the altar and even offered to pay for their flights here and all of their expenses, but I just asked them to please send me a photo of their outfits before they came, because I know how my mother was. They fought at first, calling me disrespectful and all of that, but ended up accepting. They did it, and my mom had a blue, purplish dress, nothing weird, so I said yes. But when they arrived, she was wearing a long white dress, very bridal looking, and I just couldn't. I asked them to leave, and after Alan threatened to call the police, they did. After the party, they sent me the receipts of their flights, my mother's dress, and the hotel. I replied with a "forget you" and told them that since they tricked me into thinking that my mother had another dress, that I wouldn't be paying them back. Would I be the jerk if I send my parents to jail? I'm 29, female, and my parents have always been in financial trouble, something that I've never been able to understand because they both have a really generous salary, more than 3 times of mine. Because of these financial troubles, my aunts, uncles, and grandma have had, over the years, to lend them money. We were evicted a couple of times, that I know. We have had the water, the electricity, and the internet cut. Many things that over the years I admit have affected my emotional and mental health. All of this has made my relationship with my parents very difficult over the years, more when they would take advantage of me, making me pay for many things with the money that I earned working during holidays to pay for college, or making me call my grandma to ask her for money. All of it, while my mom used to spend money whenever she could on purses or jewelry. In the moment, I became an adult because they started to sign on the bills under my name without my permission, mostly because their credit was so bad that the companies wouldn't allow them to sign with their own names. When I figured it out, I asked them to stop, but they just lied about it, and I just let it go because I couldn't deal with it. Fast forward to the present, because of the whole situation going on, I was looking forward to the money from my income tax return, because my salary has gone down, so this money would have helped me out a lot. Instead of that, I received a letter from a courthouse saying that the money has been confiscated. I immediately phoned my mom, and she said that she didn't know anything about it, but she will fix it. Since I don't trust her at all, I called the court myself, and they explained to me that during the last year, there's been a process against me by a company I owe money from unpaid bills. All the papers had been sent to my parents and they had signed and taken them. The debt was not paid with the money from my tax income, so part of my salary from now on will be confiscated too until it is fully paid. So my parents stole my identity to contract a bill under my name, didn't pay for it, and when the company claimed that debt through lawyers and a judge, they kept all the papers from me, which is also illegal, apparently waiting for all of it to be fixed by itself. My mother said that it was her right to put it under my name because I am her daughter, and it is my duty to help with the family burdens. Since then, and after really nasty words from her side and my sister's, who says that I am ungrateful and selfish, I haven't spoken to them, and I am in the middle of everything going on right now, with my salary already low, paying for a debt that is not mine. My friends and boyfriend say that I should talk with the police and stop all of this, otherwise they'll keep doing it, and I'm afraid they will. So, would I be the jerk if I speak to the court, even if it means that my parents, who are 70 and 63, could go to jail? Edit. Answers to some questions here. I am neither from USA nor from UK. I'm from another European country. But anyway, some of the advice that you've given me also applies here. I contacted the credit companies, Equifax, Experian, some time ago, and for the moment, the only debt that appears is another one from my parents, 4 years old. In my country, they expire when they are 6, so I'm not really worried about this one. I am worried about the other ones that I don't know about. That's why I gave my mom an ultimatum before going NC and told her that I wanted her to give me a list of the things she had contracted under my name and a signed document where she says she is going to pay for them or I will contact a lawyer. That's when she said all the duty/right thing and basically said I was bluffing. Since then, I've been thinking about what to do because even if they have done all of this, they're still my parents and I've always hoped that they would change and everything would be better. Also, it's really difficult to get rid of the feeling that I'm being selfish as I've been told. I'm going to try to make it through a lawyer, through a civil demand, so they don't go to jail, which they could. In my country, identity theft is up to 3 years of prison, and here you go if you get more than 2, even if you don't have a prior record. To those asking how do they spend money, I don't know. I truly have no idea. I think they just live above their means. Karen expects me to pay her college tuition in full. My parents paid for my degree out of college, which I was happy about. It cost $37,000. I was able to save up for a house, and now 4 years out of school, I was able to buy my own condo, and my boyfriend and I are planning to get married, so I've been saving for that. I now have a healthy nest egg, and I'm saving and investing along with that. Then, last month, they told me I have to pay for my sister's schooling, which was $62,000. I don't think that's fair, because they only gave me $37,000 for my schooling and never told me that I had to pay them back or pay for my sister at all. They won't admit it, but I think they lost a lot of money when my dad was trading stocks and doing risky investments since they sold their house right afterwards, saying they wanted to downsize. They also got super bitter and weird with money around our relatives, including picking a fight with my uncle who was always wealthy. No one would tell my sister or I what the fight was about, but now I assume it's because my parents lost most of their money and they're angry my uncle wouldn't help. All my cousins had their tuitions paid, so it's embarrassing my sister wouldn't as well, which is why my parents are insisting that I pay for it. I told them and my sister I would give back $19,000, which was half the amount for my schooling, so it would be like $37K was split between us. They argued with me that I should be paying for her full schooling, as my parents did for me, but I don't think that's fair, as I'd rather have had $37,000 in debt to deal with than $62,000 in debt, especially when this was sprung up on me. I told them either take the $19,000 as half my tuition payment or I wasn't going to discuss it with them again. They then called my boyfriend to accuse him of influencing me to be greedy with my own family when I should be paying for my sister's full tuition amount. I was furious and told them to accept the $19,000 and agreed to never bring up my sister's loan with me again, or I wouldn't have anything to do with this anymore and wouldn't invite them to the wedding. My mom yelled at me and told me I was an embarrassment to the family. My sister came back alone and told me she would take the $19,000 and have it be enough. I told her she had to tell me in front of our parents that she would accept the $19,000, and she retraced what she said, saying she wasn't going to do that. I know she is hoping I give up and give her the money if my parents put enough pressure on me. You can't call in sick this early. You can't call in sick this late. Background. I suffer from migraines, and unfortunately, when I get one, they tend to last 3 to 4 days, leaving me completely incapacitated and unable to do anything more than lie in bed in my dark room and cry and throw up. This means that when I get one, I basically know straight away that I'm not going to be able to do anything for the next few days. I have a casual retail job in addition to other work, which I've had for almost 20 years across different stores. I was always the one who worked extra hard and stepped up to do extra shifts or stay back when someone else couldn't come in. But the department manager we had at the time of this story was a narcissist who got off on bullying staff, but really disliked me because I stood up for myself. The funniest part was that she loved to try to stand over people to intimidate them, but with me, it failed miserably because I was about half a foot taller than her. About 15 years ago, I started to get a migraine in the middle of the day before I was meant to have a shift starting at 5 p.m. Knowing I wouldn't be able to work the following day, I called the manager to let her know I wouldn't be able to come in, thinking it would give her plenty of notice to find a replacement. Her response: "You can't call in sick the day before your shift. You don't know that you'll be sick tomorrow. If you're really sick tomorrow, then you can call in." Okay, fine. Went to bed after I took my meds. Woke up at 10 a.m. still feeling like a railroad spike had been driven through my eyes. So I called up again. The manager: "Your shift doesn't start for another 7 hours. You're just trying to get out of work. You'll probably be fine by 5 o'clock, so I'm not going to replace you yet." All right. Went back to bed and was so wiped out I didn't wake up until about 3:30. We're supposed to give 2 hours notice, so by this point it was half an hour too late. Or it would have been if I hadn't already given notice twice previously. Anyway, I was still in no shape to even get to work, let alone work. So I rang up for a third time and asked to speak to the department manager again. She was not happy. "You've only given me an hour and a half notice. That's not enough. You'd better show up to work." Me: "I've told you twice over the last 2 days that I wouldn't be able to come in." At this point, I literally had to stop and be sick. "I can't come in. You've known that since yesterday." Her: "If you're not at work at 5 p.m., I'm going to make sure you don't get any extra shifts." This was when I decided to be maliciously compliant, though I hadn't heard of that term back then. I asked my mother to drive me to work. She asked if I was really that spiteful I'd go to work sick just to make a point. And, well, yes. Yes, I am that spiteful. Clocked in and then went and sat in the fitting room under the bench instead of doing what I was supposed to be doing. My colleagues were horrified, asking what the heck I was doing there in that condition. And I told them that I'd tried calling in sick, but the manager had threatened to stop giving me shifts if I didn't show up. Those colleagues were great. One brought me a glass of water and another let me borrow her sunglasses so I could try to cut out some of the bright shop lights. After about half an hour, the manager came in, saw that I wasn't doing any work, and bent down so she could scream in my face. After I leaned forward and threw up all over her shoes. At this point, I could have held it in until I was able to get a cleaning bucket out of the cupboard, but I decided to just let her have it instead. She went absolutely nuclear and started screaming even harder. "Why would you come to work like this? You should have stayed home." And I was feeling so sick and miserable, and her screeching was reverberating in my head and making the pain worse. So I started crying and ended up being sick again all over the floor. As she stormed off, my colleagues called the store manager over, who was immediately horrified that I was at work in that condition, and called my mother to come and collect me and said that manager would be sternly talked to. Luckily, she was in hiding somewhere when my mother arrived, or she would have ripped her a new one. Because managers/HR will always look out for each other, no matter how crappy they are, the department manager didn't face any real consequences as far as I know. But after that, she pretty much pretended I didn't exist, which suited me right down to the ground. And not long afterwards, I was able to transfer to another store, so I didn't have to put up with her constantly throwing her toys out of the pram anymore. Edit. Regarding migraines, I've suffered from them since I was a kid, though they increased in frequency and duration in my early teens, and then again in my early 30s. So far, I have tried numerous preventatives after consultation with various doctors, and most either do nothing at all or only succeed in slightly delaying the onset of the extreme pain and nausea, so I can get home if I'm out somewhere and a migraine is imminent. I've also tried different versions of the contraceptive pill and also have tried discontinuing it for 6 to 8 months. The only reason I take it is to control my acne, and nothing has made any difference. The longest lasting and most severe of my migraines occur during Shark Week. I'm still looking at other potential medications from my doctor, but we'll make a list of some of the suggestions in the comments and discuss them next time I have an appointment. Also, I'm not in America. Am I the jerk for going no contact with my father, but still expecting him to pay child support? I, 18 female, was raised by a single mom. My parents divorced when I was just 2 months old, and my mom got full custody of me, so I never met my father. All I've ever really known about him is his name and the amount of child support money he transferred into my bank account each month. Now, in my country, a non-custodial parent is obligated to pay child support up until their child turns 18. But this can be extended for a few more years on the condition that said child decides to pursue a higher education and go to university. So, as you can already guess, as soon as I turned 18, my father stopped paying child support. But when I graduated high school and got accepted into a university, I decided to use this extended child support law to my advantage and took him to court. Me and my mom weren't doing all that well financially, and I thought the extra money would definitely come in handy. The case took quite a few months to get resolved, and the courtroom was the first and last place where I saw my father in person. His reasoning for not wanting to continue paying child support after I turned 18 was that I didn't want to have any sort of a relationship with him, so he didn't want to send money to a complete stranger each month anymore. He told the judge he had agreed to continue paying child support on the condition that I agreed to get to know him and talk to him on a regular basis, but I declined. I mean, even if biologically he's my father, this man is nothing more than a stranger to me. I have no real interest in getting to know him, and I never did. Wanting to have a relationship with him would be like wanting to have a relationship with the donor who conceived you. I ended up winning the case because the law is very clear on the fact that he has to pay child support for as long as I'm in university, regardless of whether I want to actually interact with him or not. Now he has to pay child support every month up until I graduate from university. We ended up getting in a huge argument as soon as the last court hearing was over, and he was really upset because I didn't even want to talk to him for a while and give him a chance, but still wanted to prey on his money. So, from a legal point of view, I'm in the right, but am I in the right from a moral point of view? Am I the jerk? I should also add that my father never made any attempts to pursue a relationship with me while I was growing up, and neither did I. My mom never actively tried to get me to meet him, but at the same time, she made it clear that she was always open to talk if I wanted to know more about him and ready to answer any questions that I might have had. Except that, well, I never really had any questions to ask her and was never really interested in him. She also never badmouthed my father and never tried to stop us from meeting each other, but neither of us ever made any sort of an attempt to do so. I don't think he's a bad man, but I don't think he's a good man either. He's just a stranger who didn't want to be involved in my life, so I don't want to be involved in his life either. I don't resent him, I have no reason to. It's just plain old disinterest, both on my part and his. Everything green? Okay. This story happened about 10 years ago. Backstory. When I was in high school and still living at home, we were required to do community service in order to graduate. Those who did more than the minimum 10 hours were granted a recommendation from the high school to any college they applied to on their application into the university where they would recommend as a contributor to society. I had been working on my own lawn care business, better phrased as a community service, since I was in 9th grade. As it came to my 12th grade year, senior year in high school, all of my neighbors were having their yards mowed and trimmed by me. Come my final year of primary school before university, I was still mowing the lawns of my neighbors free of charge, but I had also become alternate captain of my primary school's hockey team. Come my final year before university, I was still taking care of yards for my neighbors. Most of them were old enough that they couldn't take care of them without help. Of course, there was always one person who always had extra things for me to do, regardless of what I had to get done after their yard. Theirs was normally the last one since it was the closest to my home at the time. Let's call her Karen. Initially, it was just small things, like moving their yard furniture so I could mow their whole yard without missing anything. Then, the day I was sick of everything. I had mowed 5 yards at 95 degrees Fahrenheit, 35 degrees Celsius, after I had completed an hour conditioning session for hockey and an additional conditioning session for lacrosse. Honestly, I was in a bad mood. I had gotten through all of the yards without a hitch because the people I was mowing for knew it was essentially for free. Then it was Karen's turn. I was already going to be late for practice, and I knew it. As I started wheeling my mower out of her yard, I hear a, "Where do you think you're going?" I was a little stunned because I wasn't used to people just randomly running out and yelling at me. And at this point, I had completed mowing and was about to put the spray jug of Roundup away since I was done spraying all the weeds in the yard. I responded with, "I am done. I'm going home." Karen, "You're leaving without completing my yard? There is a lot of green that I am not approving. I won't sign off until all of the green in the yard has been hit." Cue malicious compliance. I looked at her and said, "You want me to hit everything that is green before I leave?" "I want you to hit anything green before you leave." I think some of you can already see where this is going. As a high schooler who was told to spray anything green, I started spraying everything green. The next day after school, my dad called me into a room. When I walked in, Karen was there scowling. "You killed all of my yard." Me, "You told me to round up everything green in your yard." My dad, "Is that actually what you told him?" "Absolutely not." Dad, "Okay, what did you say?" "I told him to—" She gets really quiet. She starts to bring up that the yard wasn't as short as she wanted, and then walks away. Dad, "What did you tell him to do?" "I told him to hit anything green in my yard." I haven't seen such a big grin on my dad's face since. Dad, "You didn't." Me, "I did." I ended up spraying Roundup on Karen's entire yard. Anything green, Roundup. Grass, Roundup. Any flower with a green stem, Roundup. Her prized orchids, Roundup. Since I was already going to be late, I didn't just do the recommended level of concentrate. It was twice as strong as it should have been. Fallout. Since I had a whole neighborhood of people who would say I did an amazing job taking care of their yard, when Karen called the cops to report me for property damage, she got a warning for falsifying police reports as well as a scolding by the cops to not tell someone to do something if they don't want it executed to the letter. I have since moved back into the same neighborhood as I grew up in, and I see Karen around. She glares at me every time I see her. Her yard has not recovered. Am I the jerk for kicking my boyfriend out over my cat? For context, my 24 female, boyfriend 30 male, and I recently moved in together. It's something we've been talking about, and when his lease ended, he moved into my apartment. I have a cat, Millie, who is my baby girl that I've had since she was a kitten. Back when my boyfriend and I first started dating, he made the joke that if we were ever going to live together, he'd have to get rid of that cat, which I dismissed at the time. When he would come over again, he would ignore Millie, making jokes about how cats are stuck up, how much he's a dog person. Again, I dismissed this because he never acted hostile towards her. I figured it was just a preference. When we started to get serious about moving in, he asked if I would consider giving her away because he didn't like the idea of living with a cat. I almost laughed before realizing he was serious. I told him that under no circumstances would I get rid of my cat. I felt guilty about being unwilling to compromise, but he actually took it well and reassured me that if she was this important to me, he'd get over it. Fast forward to last night. I don't think he realized I was in the kitchen when he came home. Millie was on the couch, and I heard him go into the room and give this sigh. Before I could call out, I heard him say, "You're so worthless." It terrified me because I've never heard him speak with such malice. He sounded like a different person. It was just so cold and hostile that I panicked and rushed out there to see him looking at Millie. Here's where I might be the jerk. I completely freaked out. I was yelling, asking what he thought he was doing talking to her like that. He jumped and I scooped Millie up and told him to leave my apartment right now. He looked so stunned and started to argue, asking where was he supposed to go. I told him that I don't care, he just needs to leave. He was upset and said he was going for a drive and slammed the door behind him. I immediately started sobbing and holding Millie. I was shaking and she could tell I was upset and kept cuddling me. She calmed me down, and later when he texted asking if he could come back, I said yes. I put Millie in the bedroom so we could talk. We were both a lot calmer and I felt awful after he explained his side. I'll often call Millie little names, and he said he was just trying to be playfully mean too and misjudged his tone. But he said it felt awful that I chose a cat over him and that I called it my apartment when it's supposed to be our place. He told me he was constantly feeling second best to Millie, who I wouldn't even consider rehoming, and I had thrown him out over an animal when he's a person. I explained to him how much he means to me and apologized for ever making him feel like this wasn't his home. I think I might have overreacted, but I just don't know. He's my boyfriend, and she's something I keep refusing to compromise on, but I also don't believe that he just misjudged his tone. Am I the jerk? I'd pick Millie over that psycho any day. HR Disciplined Management. I was working for a decently sized construction company in the UK when I was about 18. It was my first real job since leaving school. The pay wasn't great, to be honest, but I was all in on doing my best. The company made a habit of not paying overtime. In fact, it was a no overtime company. You work 9 to 5 and that's it. This was clear in the contract. My boss at the time must have not had much of a personal life, as he was the guy that sent emails at 1 a.m., etc. They used to call out of hours all the time on our mobiles, and if I was available, I'd answer. No big shakes there. I would help if I could. The calls were often complete nonsensical, such as, "Tomorrow I need you to do this and that." Everything was urgent. In reality, all of these calls could have waited until the morning. After a few weeks of ignoring the calls, I got dragged in to see him. The conversation was pretty much one way and went, "You're being paid enough to monitor your phone at all times. It could be an emergency. I don't think you're committed. I can find someone else who is," etc. This is where I thought, forget it. I'd turn up to work in the daytime and purposely nod off in meetings. I'd also try my best to look distant. The inevitable happened, and HR called me in to see if I was okay. I explained that I had not been sleeping, maybe 2 to 3 hours a night, as I was monitoring the phone for calls from the boss. They asked why I just didn't turn the ringer really high or put it on vibrate, so I explained I was a very heavy sleeper and had missed the phone on a few occasions, causing the boss to warn me. This stopped immediately, and non-working hours were off limits to casual calls and generic emails. I still work there now, and I'm quite high up in the business, and I still get reminded on occasion that we work that way because I was falling asleep in meetings. Not proud, but at least we all enjoy a good work-life balance and still perform as a business to the same standard. I think I might have thrown him under the bus a bit, but I did try to discuss it once, and it was very much his way or nothing. Am I the jerk for shaming someone's poverty with my choice? I, 20 female, recently went to stay with my husband's, 25 male, parents for the first time. Along with him, we are recently married. We'll be here for 2 more weeks. I'm fortunate enough to get along with his family really well. During the course of the visit, I ended up buying myself a specific kind of pillowcase online to be delivered to me at my in-laws. I have an autoimmune skin condition, which is significantly worsened by sleeping on particular fabrics, severe enough to matter, very visible rash and discomfort. The pillowcase was relatively expensive, but I thought it's fine as I could add it into my rotation at home. My husband was very upset about my purchase and insisted I shouldn't use it. Context: my family is from a somewhat significantly higher economic bracket than my husband's family. It hasn't really caused tensions before, but my husband thought this pillowcase purchase was 1. Flaunting my ability to buy something expensive easily, and 2. Shaming his family for their lesser quality pillowcases. He suggested I try using some topical medicine if I have an outbreak. I argued that I absolutely would not mind what pillowcase I sleep on were it not for the skin condition I have, and prefer to use the pillowcase because I find many topical medicines ineffective. My husband threw the pillowcase away while I was out with mother-in-law, and on waking the next day, my face was red and painful. I bought another pillowcase, intending to keep it hidden and pull it out just at bedtime to minimize potentially offending his parents and upsetting my husband. But he found this one as well and basically told me I should leave his parents home if I'm too good to sleep on their pillowcases. I absolutely do not want to upstage his parents' linens or cause them any offense. I like them a lot. I also can't imagine voluntarily enduring skin outbreaks for the next 2 weeks. I feel like I should be standing my ground in this argument, but I also don't want to ruin this holiday with a relatively petty issue. Am I the jerk? Additional info I forgot. I did get a nice pattern which I like. So not the absolute cheapest pillowcase of this material. It's visibly a nice pillowcase. Update. Wow, this became so dramatic. Mother-in-law commented again on my outbreak during breakfast. My husband was right there, so I just said it's usually worse in the morning. Mother-in-law asked if it might be the detergent on the bedclothes or the air freshener in the room and offered to switch brands. Husband got super annoyed, like, "Goodness sake, you don't need to go buy her a special detergent. She can use the cream if she wants to." Mother-in-law said, anyway, she'd be happy to get me something if it would help. And husband said that wasn't the case when he was growing up. It became a list of complaints that I had no idea he was silently stewing on. Apparently, I am pretty careless about small purchases. Some listed examples: buying a new pair of nail clippers when I hadn't checked properly for the others, and tending to buy upgrades with purchases which I don't really need. I actually could probably be better with money overall, and we clearly relate differently to purchases. He mentioned some instances of going without when he was growing up, which are still troubling him. There was a lot of falsetto imitation of me acting like a diva, which actually made me crack up a bit. It was so over the top. Mother-in-law was just blinking through most of this, and I think some of his comments about his childhood hit her hard. When he huffed off, I apologized for being the source of drama. She said she also didn't know he was carrying this baggage and said to her memory, the really financially rough periods were limited to a few years in his early teens. We had a sort of heart-to-heart about the whole experience, and I mentioned at some point that I usually sleep on this material and could just order pillowcases, which she was totally okay with. I didn't mention the conflict about it, as it seemed like she had had enough negative info for the morning. Husband hasn't come back yet. He went over to father-in-law's worksite for the day, so I don't know how it's going to play out. But it's clear now that he has some trauma surrounding finances and is going to need some real discussion. I can see it becoming a huge issue down the line, as many commenters have said. Thanks to everyone for the feedback and advice. It's been helpful to confirm that I'm not being so petty and should address this whole issue. This guy's even more of a psycho than that cat boy. I need to check in at work this weekend, even though I have plans? Sure. I'm going to keep this somewhat vague, so bear with me please. My company is undergoing some changes and having to work with another entity on some things to supposedly make the work easier. It won't, but the higher-ups in my company say it will. Another story for another time. Next week, the first part of it begins. It's been extremely arduous because the other entity has been less than helpful and, well, lazy. Thankfully, my coworkers did a lot of the heavy lifting, so to speak, and things will go smoothly. Anyway, this past week, things have progressed well. Until Friday. Now all of a sudden, we need to log in over the weekend to review things. People involved in this are literally across the country, East Coast, Midwest, and West Coast. Many of us have plans for the weekend, like me and a couple of my coworkers. No way we can log in, but we're told we must. Stuff must be further discussed. At the very least, and this was key, we need to call in to participate. No one was happy, as there's absolutely no need for it. There is nothing more that needs to be done or discussed. We all say so numerous times, but finally agree to call reluctantly. Cue malicious compliance. Myself and another coworker had plans to attend a sporting event that Saturday. Another coworker had to go to a wedding, and yet another had an anniversary party to go to. All of our plans were at about the same time of the meeting, 1:30 ET, albeit in different time zones. We all call into the Zoom meeting as requested. None of us muted our phones. We all planned it that way. For the next 15 minutes or so, no one could hear anything. Crowd noise, wedding, it was right after the vows, and people were outside cheering at that point apparently. 2 kids yammering in the car, with the car radio playing as well. All the background noise was overwhelming. We're being asked to mute so they could do the meeting, but we all ignored it. Meeting ended, and that was that. A useless meeting made even more useless. I should point out, my supervisor was among the group not on mute, and we got their blessing to do this, as they also joined in on the malicious compliance. Got a text this morning from my supervisor and was told there were no issues, as we all had expected. Turns out, that meeting wasn't needed after all. But hey, we at least got an hour of overtime approved by my supervisor for just a phone call where no one could hear a darn thing. Edit. First of all, thank you for the awards. Second, I keep getting asked why we weren't put on mute. We were integral to the meeting. Muting us would mean no one from my company could have been involved, and we needed to be. Myself and another for sure. Regardless, there was going to be background noise from two of us. Am I the jerk for not wanting to feature my fiance's former significant other who passed away in our wedding? My fiance was engaged for about a month to his high school sweetheart when she passed away. For personal reasons, I won't get into how it happened, but it was no one's fault. This was maybe 6 years ago. Just for the purpose of the post, I'll call her Mandy. My fiance has been very open about this loss and how it has affected him throughout our relationship. I know he misses her, and the memories he has with her are important and special. I don't want to take away anything or demean the relationship, and I've always been there for him on hard days and supported him when he needed it. We got engaged last year. The date is to be determined still for obvious reasons. It was very emotional for both of us, and we've been really happy. But since planning the wedding, I've been feeling like I'm not only planning it for myself, but for Mandy as well. It started as comments from his family. A lot of, "Oh, Mandy would have loved this" type things. I brushed it off at first and just thought it was a way of them processing grief. I have a great relationship with his family, but I know they loved Mandy too. When I went dress shopping, his mom and sister came. They kept talking about what dress Mandy would have worn, what they could see her in, etc. It might seem like nothing, but it really overtook the conversation. So much that another bridesmaid told me later that she felt uncomfortable for me too. It turned from harmless comments into focusing what should be a special event for me into reminiscing over Mandy. My latest project has been compiling old photos of me and my fiance for a slideshow at the reception or a rehearsal dinner, we haven't decided. He told me there's something he's been wanting to ask me. He really wants to include some kind of "in memory of Mandy" into our wedding and thinks the slideshow would be a perfect place. At this point, I was, and still am, fed up with the Mandy comments taking over our wedding. I sternly told him that no, I don't think that would be appropriate, as this is our wedding and should focus on us. We are having a table with pictures of loved ones who passed, and she will be featured there. He told me that he doesn't think that's enough to honor her memory. He wants to incorporate her in a bigger way, as she never got her dream wedding. He also thinks it would be a sweet surprise for Mandy's parents, who are invited since he is still really close to them. I did lose my cool, I will admit. I told him honestly how I felt about the Mandy situation taking over our wedding, and how I'm uncomfortable with it. I also asked him if he could ask his family to limit the Mandy comments at our wedding, since now I'm afraid the whole wedding will be focused on her. I told him that I need time away to think and have been staying at my parents' house, but we've still been talking. Am I the jerk? Am I overreacting? Well, what do you think? Is OP overreacting, or do you completely agree with her? Please let us know. Karen's brat came into my yard to get their ball. I threatened to call the cops. I have to live next to this lady, and I don't want to be enemies for no good reason. And also, I need to know if I'm in the wrong before any legal action is taken. I am 36, female. I originally moved into a new house with my husband, 37, male, which is in a nice suburban neighborhood. Originally, there was no trouble, and then trouble arose. Our neighbors on one side consist of a mother and 4 kids. They seem nice enough and quiet. I don't know how old the kids are, but there's 2 tween boys, and the younger ones are a girl and a boy. When it happened, my husband was at work and I was driving home. As I was driving down the street, I saw one of the older boys walk into my yard, bend down, pick up a ball, and go back to his house. I was angry because I was raised with the idea of never trespassing into someone else's yard like that without permission. I confronted the boy and he said he was sorry, but you could tell he didn't even really mean it. So I went and talked to his mother, and I didn't get anywhere there. She didn't seem to take me seriously at all, and she told me that I was overreacting. I felt like she was invalidating my feelings, and I snapped and told her that she better not let her kids trespass in my yard again, otherwise I would call the police, and she called me a jerk. So she escalated into name-calling first and shut the door in my face. I'm upset. My husband hasn't said much, but he's promised to install security cameras. I want to know your opinions based on the reasons above. Well, who do you agree with? OP or the neighbor? Please let us know. Someone needs to get OP some milk. Ruin my summer? Enjoy not going to university. This was a little over 10 years ago in my early 20s, but it's still one of my favorite stories of karma that suited well to my revenge. As a teenager, I got a part-time job as a lifeguard at the biggest pool in the city, if not the province. I was a hard worker, and over the years, I had every certification I could get. Over the summers, I'd often work on nearby beaches. One year, these rural beaches had a really hard time keeping staff, so they'd ask people from my pool to work there. It just so happened my parents had a cottage on one of the beaches, and I said, hey, I'd be interested. Working at middle of nowhere beach, it would be peaceful, and I can come home on weekends if I want. I took the job about 4 hours away from home for a 10-week contract. I was a lifeguard instructor trainer. I certify people to teach other people how to train lifeguards. At the time of this story, I was one of the youngest to have this certification. Most of my coworkers were going into their second year of working on this beach, and frankly, second year of being a lifeguard. It was going to be my first year working in this area. Basically, the head manager told me, look, it's your first time working out here. We need someone with your experience. We can't give you beach captain's position, management, on paper, but we are willing to pay you at a beach captain rate plus extra for your certifications, and you can fill in as beach captain on days when the others can't. As far as we're concerned, you're an alternate. We just don't want to upset the locals more than we need to. Be advised though, you may need to work at a few other beaches out around there. More pay? Fewer responsibilities? Yeah, I guess I can take this one for the team. Here's what you need to know about this place. The area is a naturally beautiful place. This is one of the best drives on the continent, one of the top 15 islands in the world. Mountains to the left, endless oceans to the right, beaches everywhere. It's also one of the poorest parts of the country, and some communities have a mob mentality when outsiders come to work here. For the most part, my coworkers liked me and appreciated my experience, except for the one beach captain we'll call Maggie. Everyone employed goes to a training camp retreat. District managers go for 5 days, beach captains go for 4 days, and general staff goes for 3 days. I was only asked to show up for the general staff, did my thing, met my new coworkers. Maggie rubs me the wrong way and started calling me rookie, and then she left. Turns out she was graduating high school and had prom to attend. She didn't want to do the rest of the training because of all of the after-prom parties. Okay, that's weird. I'm waking up at 7 a.m. to do a 10-kilometer run with everyone before breakfast, and you're passed out after a night of drinking. I'm annoyed, but if I could pull it off, I might do the same. No biggie. How could she pull off getting out of mandatory training, you ask? She's a family legacy. Once upon a time, her mom was the beach captain and now runs the local pool in the middle of nowhere town. If you were certified as a lifeguard around there, you had to go through her. Maggie's sister was the beach captain, then district manager, and recently retired from the service and went to nursing school. Maggie was the next in line to do this. She was going to be awarded a scholarship through the lifeguard service for her school of choice. At the end of the summer, there's an AGM where they make all these announcements, but it was a well-known secret. Day 1 of the summer on the beach starts. We're setting up the beach. It's a half day, not many patrons around. We organize first aid kits, equipment, set up our hut, test the phones, etc. District manager, a local, arrives to inspect everything. He's happy. He's a buddy of mine, and as we were the last stop of his beaches to inspect, he hangs out with us. Day's up, and Maggie's mother shows up and tells her to start packing for the swimming instructor symposium. Turns out, Maggie is leaving tomorrow for the Dominican Republic on her pool's dime for 3 weeks. That's 30% of the lifeguard season. She actually tells me, "See you in 3 weeks, rookie," and leaves. The district manager and I drop our jaws and wonder, what the heck? Why is this only coming out now? I help him out. We sit down and come up with a new schedule for the next 3 weeks. My supervisor filled in some of her shifts, and we even worked together a few times. Now, looks like I have to be a beach captain with the actual new guards at least 3 weeks. It was more work for me, but honestly, Maggie's departure was a blessing. I've hardly met her, but I doubt we're going to get along. She rubs me the wrong way. Those 3 weeks without her, I got a great feng shui, zen groove, and inner harmony thing going on. It was the healthiest mentally and physically I've been in my life. Of course, the lack of negative emotions directed toward me would not last. It ended the day Maggie returned, literally within the first hour of us working together. Maggie, my beach captain, started our day together by berating me in front of her friends. "Hey, rookie, do you even know how to do CPR? I was watching you at training camp and you were doing it wrong. I need you to show me how to do it right now." You want me to show you how to do CPR? Sure, no problem. Could ask nicer, but whatever, I'll put up with this. We have to practice so much every day anyway. Then she drops this bit of information while I practice incorrectly. If you don't have anything under them, you'll dig a hole in the sand. Maggie, this doesn't make sense, but whatever. It's not like I'm an instructor in this or anything, or have basic knowledge of physics that pushing on sand isn't the same thing as digging. The whole day consisted of Maggie calling me rookie and being pointlessly rude in her critiques of my life-saving skills. Of course, it wouldn't be a good work story unless someone stole someone's lunch. Hey Maggie, is that my lunch in your mouth right now? Oh, was that your lunchbox? Well, it wasn't your lunchbox, was it? I'm the beach captain. You can't talk to me like that. This would become our daily routine on our shifts together. I began packing a decoy lunch with half-eaten items or empty wrappers. This gave me the opportunity to hide and eat my real lunch without her bothering me. By week 4, it's our mid-season evaluation. There's 2 parts, physical evaluation and professional evaluation. District manager does the physical and it's straightforward. All employees show up at the beach before it opens. You run 4K, swim 600 meters, paddle 2K, etc. Apparently, I embarrassed Maggie. I was the most improved from start of the season to the end of season. I was already in the top 25%, but now I was physically one of the top 5%. Maggie, however, got worse. A lot worse. She was mediocre, but in the general top 50%, but was now one of the worst physical guards, bottom 10%. Her times all were substantially lower, but luckily for her, it's not all physical. There's still the professional evaluation. The beach captain who works with you the most writes up your evaluation. You get a score out of 50, 10 5-point characteristics, punctual, customer service, safety, etc. You get graded and short notes are written to explain your score. At the bottom, there's a recommendation section on what to do and work on. One of the other beach captains who tolerated Maggie wrote her evaluation and it wasn't all bad. Of course, Maggie was the one who wrote my evaluation, despite only working with me a few times. I don't get to see it, which is normal, and when it's done, she passes it into the boss. Once it's handed in, the district manager pulls Maggie and I aside. He rips it up in front of us and says, "Maggie, this isn't a real evaluation. You gave him all zeros. Your notes are incoherent and, in the recommendation section, you told him to leave and never come back. This is not acceptable. I've worked with him more than you did. I'm going to write up the mid-season evaluation." Maggie breaks down in tears, plays the victim that the outsider is taking her job and she's protecting herself. Manager's not buying it, but ultimately goes easier on her. Temper's cool. I get a modest review with things to improve on. Right away, I knew this would happen again and I'd need to make notes to defend myself. I have a reputation in the life-saving community I'd like to keep. Things got weirder after this. Aside from up-teen mentions of calling me rookie against my wishes, my notebook was getting filled. Some highlights include, she stole my rooster ketchup with a green top and lathered her hot dog only to get upset with me. She wrote me up for tricking her with hot sauce, though she really stole my sriracha. Went on a walking patrol down the beach for 2 hours only to end up hanging out with her friends, drinking on the beach, and having a fire. Double no-no. Called her dealer to deliver to her while on guard, not even discreetly. I taught the junior guards some basic stuff. Once the class is over, she goes up to the parents and tells them I taught all of the wrong things, and it's basically done this way instead. On a particularly bad day, she went off on the middle-aged gentleman with Down syndrome who normally brings treats to her because he didn't bring any treats on this day. Things were cartoonishly stupid. Why would someone act this way? Turns out she was also bashing me to the other guards. They had regularly informed me of stuff like this. "Hey, just so you know, Maggie told me you hit someone's car with a hammer. Obviously you didn't, but heads up, she's telling the locals about it." What did I get myself into? This is ridiculous. My summer paradise at the beautiful place on Earth is ruined by a succubus leeching off of the inner peace. I was at my end. This isn't worth it. I want to go home. I'm belittled by an entitled brat, and I don't need this as much as they need me. I'm going to sleep it off and think with a clear head in the morning. Note, this place is a sleepy beach town. It's heavily wooded and not many cell towers. Reception isn't great. Also, it's hot summer. I live alone. I hate pants. When I'm home, I'm probably not wearing any. And the lock on the door isn't great. It works, but with a bit of effort, you can get past it. We basically put an exterior padlock on the door when we are away for extended periods. But hey, no one knows anyone's living here, right? Who's going to come bother me out here in the middle of nowhere? 5:30 a.m. Boom, boom, boom. Huh? What's happening?
Link Hanford. Answer your phone. I've been calling you all night. Why aren't you wearing any pants? That's gross. You have to work at the beach further away today. I've got an appointment I've had scheduled for months and can't change it. You need to go there, or I won't be back in time.
Wait, what's going on? Why is she in my house right now? I thought to myself as I was startled and jumped up, covering myself with whatever I could find. I raised my temper and got her out of my home as quickly as possible and say to myself, that's it, I'm done. This isn't worth it. I call my district manager, tell him the rundown of what's been happening lately. Initially, he thought I might be embellishing the truth a bit because it's all so ridiculous. He tells me if I go to work, there's 2 weeks left in the contract. He'll make sure Maggie and I don't work together anymore as long as I can stick around. Later on, I'm begrudgingly working at the further away beach and we get a call. It's the district manager. Link Hanford, I owe you an apology. I thought you were making this stuff up. Maggie just called to report you for not wearing any pants and yelling at her. As she explained this, she admitted to walking into your home. What do you want to do about this? District manager, which beach captain or alternate has worked with Maggie the most in this summer? Looks like it's you by a fair bit. Is she allowed to do my end of season valuation? No, because of what she did with your mid-season. We've decided that I would do it personally again. Okay, great. Who gets to do hers then? Well, you can guess where this ended up. As luck would have it, Maggie and I got to work together once more due to someone being sick. The whole time she's telling me,
I'm going to make your review so bad, you're going to wish you never came back here, rookie.
At that point, I just smiled with a big grin. The summer may have its last dawn, but this will be the end of you, Maggie. Writing up Maggie's end-of-season evaluation was between the supervisor and I. The rest of the staff were unaware of this, so I used the final days talking to the staff. What's the weirdest thing Maggie did to you this summer? Here's the highlights. Stole the pretty boy guard's car keys at the end of the day to keep him around because she was flirting with him. He had to go right to the hospital to visit his mom. Gradually, through the course of a day, she spiked the guard's work water bottle with vodka. He had never been so drunk before and had to drive home. After hours, she went to a lifeguard girls' night out and skipped out on the bill. No, she wasn't invited again after that. I'm composing her end-of-season evaluation. I'm smart about it. I grade reasonably well with things, to her credit, she was good at. She improved her swimming skills, which is something after all. But everything else, I avoid grading a 1 as much as possible to avoid looking like I'm purposely out to get her. More than just grading, I'm providing written documentation to back this up. I've got my journal of horrible Maggie moments, my coworkers' experiences with her, and I've been smart enough to make copies of our notes from patrons with her mentioned. But the coup de grace, recommendations for next season. Recommend not to re-offer beach captain or alternate beach captain position next season. Recommend awarding scholarship to someone else in the service. Not long after this gets submitted, I get a call from the head boss, senior manager, who hasn't been made privy to Maggie and I's situation. Link Hanford, I've known you for a few years. I'm reading Maggie's end-of-season evaluation, and there are some serious allegations here. Her family will likely rebuke this and make it a problem for my office. Not giving her this scholarship sounds harsh. Do you have any documentation to back up any of this? Do you really think that she deserves this? Well, sir, that's ultimately up to you. Here are notes and times from the entire team. Feel free to call any one of them. Here's the footage from my trail cam of her breaking into my home at 5:30 in the morning. Here's the contact info for the gentleman whom she berated. Here's the reports patrons have made about her. Oh, this is bad. Well, thanks for being so thorough with this. Epilogue. Well, word got to her that she wouldn't be receiving her scholarship. Instead, it went to an incredibly nice and hard worker in another district. Maggie's mom complained for a while about come from a ways, taking all the jobs, but then she heard how Maggie treated the gentleman with Down syndrome. She may have been the town's princess, but that man was the salt of the earth and immune to any harsh treatment. Needless to say, Maggie didn't come to the AGM. The next year, I was knee-deep in my casual career and didn't re-enroll in the lifeguard service, but offered my services as a substitute. One of the guards I liked last year calls me to see if I can sub for them for a weekend. I decided I'll do it as long as Maggie isn't working. He laughs and says no, but she's on staff as a regular lifeguard. Well, Maggie wasn't working, but her cousin was. Uh-oh, this can't be good. Our first interaction was kind of amazing. Wait, are you the Link Hanford? Yes. I prepare myself for a day of harassment.
Oh man, you are awesome. Maggie and her mom hate you. They're so mean. Our family hates them. She's so entitled and makes us look bad. You're like a legend around here.
Well, this is a change from pace from what I was expecting. We became friends over the course of the day, and she explains to me that Maggie thought her scholarship was a sure thing. Her mom pulled strings for her to get it, and it fell through, so she never saved any money for school. Maggie's plans of getting into nursing didn't work out. Maggie's mom took a lateral promotion in the life-saving world. That new position didn't last, and she was laid off, only to go back to her old pool as the assistant to the person who took over her job. She wasn't able to pull any more strings after that. Last time I checked, Maggie went to a community college and took a less expensive continuing care attendant course with the plan of eventually jumping over to nursing when she saved some money. Unfortunately for her, the instructors weren't crazy about her better-than-you attitude, and she was kicked out of the course sometime in second year. Last time I saw her, she was working at the summer ice cream stand by the beach I visited on a lovely vacation to one of the most beautiful places in the world. Am I the jerk for asking for either my PS4 or $1,000 from my brother during his time of need? I'm in a bit of a pickle right now, and I could use some moral judgment. I, 19 female, very avidly play video games. To give you an idea of how passionate I am about them, I'm currently going to college for video game development and computer science. And most people know that playing video games has become a pretty expensive hobby. So back when I was a preteen, I received a PS4 as a Christmas gift from my dad. I had to pay for all the games and anything extra, but that's okay. So I've bought tons of games and have probably spent nearly $1,000 in games and DLC, all from my own pocket. A few years ago, my older brother, 25 male, started liking video games too, so he began using my PS4 regularly to the point that he used it more than even I did. We began splitting the prices of games we wanted to play, and it made it easier on both of us doing that. Here's where the issue comes in. My brother had been living at home for a couple years while he went to a community college in our hometown, but a couple years back, he moved several hours away to attend a different college. When he did that, he took the PS4 with him. I was not made aware of this until he had already moved out. I came back home one day from a friend's house to find that the console, controllers, and all of the games were missing. Turned out, he lied to our mom that I had given him permission to take it. Turns out, his girlfriend had apparently taken a liking to The Sims 4 and played it pretty much non-stop on our PS4 and wanted to make her happy. I made the decision that once he graduated and worked full-time, then I'd ask for him to either return the PS4 and all games, controllers, and game drives, or to reimburse me for it. Now that the time has come, he graduated months ago and ended up landing a great paying job. So I finally took the time and asked him what I stated in the previous paragraph. He ended up going off and yelling at me. Apparently, his girlfriend decided to become a stay-at-home wife and he's paying the bills. He thought I was aware of this, so he was super upset that I'd be such a greedy jerk in his time of need. I told him that he didn't have to give me money if he just gave me back what was mine. And if he did give me money, I didn't need it right now, nor in a single payment. But he said that his girlfriend was super attached to it, so he couldn't do that to her. We argued more before he ended up hanging up and blocking me on everything. The reaction was so extreme that I'm wondering if I was wrong. I didn't realize he was having financial issues, but I guess I should have been more in the know, considering his family. Edit. Just found out he lied about the financial hardships. Talked to some family members and found out that the only bills he pays is the electric bill because he's living in my grandfather's old home. I will be calling from my mom's phone tomorrow to let him know that I'm taking him to small claims court. Thank you, everyone. Edit 2. Had a lot of people confused as to why I waited until he graduated to ask for my PS4 back. I didn't include some info in the post because I hit my character limit. I did ask for it back immediately after it was stolen, and we ended up coming to an agreement that we'd switch off having the PS4 each month. After a few months of doing this, he stopped bringing it back. I realized I was not going to get it back until he could buy himself his own PS4 and games, so the PS4 was truly only missing for a year. Update. I was ruled as not the jerk, and it made me finally realize how much of a pushover I've been to my brother. It took many comments encouraging me to take action that finally convinced me to take back what's mine. And now I can very proudly say that we've won. The day after I originally made my post was pretty crazy. I took the advice of many Redditors to threaten to take my brother to small claims court. So that morning I called my brother through my mom's phone to let him know that I'll be taking him to a small claims court. He did answer, but he laughed off my claim and hung up. This is where I decided to take another Redditor's recommendation of getting my family involved. For those of you who are unaware, my brother currently lives in the house that my grandfather owns. He basically lives there for free and only has to pay electric. So I called my grandfather. He was livid. He told me not to worry about anything and that he'd handle it. I got off the phone with my grandfather and I got a call from my brother about half an hour later. My brother said he'd bring the PS4 and all of the accessories to my apartment on Sunday, but I ended up heeding the advice of a Redditor and put down my own terms. I told him that I expected it at my house tomorrow after he got home from work and that I'd be recording the exchange if he tried something funny. Thank you to another Redditor for that. About an hour later, I texted my brother's girlfriend the question that many people were wondering. Did she know that he stole it from me? The answer is luckily no. She did not know that it was stolen from me. Weirdly, she did know it was stolen, but she thought it was stolen from one of his friends that he used to smoke with. After we talked, she offered to take all of my belongings to my aunt's house for safekeeping until she could drive it over to me when she goes on a trip upstate, since I live about 2 hours away. I will be recording her as well, even if I trust her a bit more. And for those wondering, what did my grandpa do to my brother to make him change up his act so quick? He gave my brother 30 days to move out before he kicked him out. But the real kicker was that he threatened to take my brother out of his will. Keep in mind that this was not the first time my brother has been a snake to a family member. This just happened to finally be the breaking point. So my brother finally got what was coming to him. He lost the PS4, all of its accessories, his home, and me. So there it is, everyone. The surprisingly short end to our endeavor. This could not have been possible without the support, advice, and judgment that all of the kind people on this subreddit had provided me with. Cheers to our victory, my friends. P.S. I've had a lot of people upset that I ruined the relationship with my brother and got him kicked out over an old console. This is not the first time my brother has stolen from me or other people. He's stolen jewelry, electronics, and money from my wallet so that he could buy stuff. Not only that, he's always been hostile to me and is nothing like a brother to me. I have 3 more siblings, so I know what a good sibling relationship looks like. That's why I don't plan on continuing my relationship with him. It's not just about the PS4. And he's done these things to several other family members and my grandfather, who my brother currently lives in the house of. My brother had several warnings from my grandpa and was going to be kicked out if he pulled something again. The PS4 situation was just the breaking point for all of this. Hopefully that cleared up any confusion. Lady snatches dinosaur model out of my hands. So I was heading to a toy store, name redacted for privacy's sake, because they had informed me they had the new Cole Physis model made by Safari Limited. I didn't have that model in my collection, and I usually order my models there, and I have a good enough relationship with the store workers to let me know when a certain model on my list is available. Or sometimes I prepay them to have a certain item in stock, and they always have provided. So I go into the store wearing a red shirt because I felt like it, and normally the toy store workers wear red, but they have tags on, so you know where this is going. So I enter the store and ask if they have the Cole Physis, and they point me in the right direction, since in this case it wasn't one of the models I prepaid them for. So I see the Cole Physis among other models. It wasn't the only one, and I get my hands on it. When I take it off the shelf, a lady says to me, "Oh, thank you. I can take it from here." I turn around and see this lady that looks like she is in her late 30s holding out her hand to me, expecting me to just plop the dinosaur in her hands. I was looking confused for a moment, and then she got frustrated and asked me if I was hard of hearing. I asked why she wanted me to hand over the model I wanted, and she asked what I meant. I was an employee. I suddenly got her assumption and told her that no, I don't work here. I was just a customer. She fumed and pointed out that I was wearing the same shade of red as the workers. I responded that red is not exclusive to this store, and if she would excuse me, I was going to purchase the Cole Physis. She then got intrusive and started asking why would an adult collect dinosaur models. I responded that people are allowed to have hobbies and tried to move on. Apparently not satisfied with my answer, she blocked me and snatched the coelphysis out of my hands and went to the counter. I was about to shrug my shoulders and grab the spares, not wanting to escalate, until I realized that she had also taken the other coelphysis models on the shelf. The other remaining models were Brachiosaurus and Microraptor, by the way. A little bit infuriated at this, but keeping my calm, I went to the counter and asked her to give it back and told the people at the counter that she had snatched the model out of my hands. They asked her if it was true, and she actually told the truth, but only because I was being a bad employee, lying about wanting the model for myself and not providing good customer service. Now the counter workers, who had seen me enough times as a consistent buyer, pointed out to the lady that I wasn't a worker and she got huffy. She then said that she was the proper purchaser because she was getting them for her kid, while an adult shouldn't be playing with toys. That maybe if I wasn't collecting them, I would properly become an adult. So one of the counter workers called the store owner, who came to ask what was going on. After explaining, he had a frown on his face and went to check the security footage. After seeing that she had snatched it out of my hands and had escalated the situation, he ordered her to give me my Safari model, or that he would have her ousted from the store. Now, the store owner is a big guy, so she withered under his gaze a bit and gave me my Safari. I calmly thanked her. I really didn't want to have to deal with her any further, and the store people, but I will admit I did enjoy seeing her crumple at the sight of a very annoyed burly guy. And now I have a coelphysis in my collection.
Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.